Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Keep the Mic On. I am Simply Sherry. And if you have been with us at all, or if this is your first time here since March of 2020, we have been here in conversation with an amazing artist that happens to be a friend of ours tonight, more so than ever. Um, we, my week is called From Behind the Microphone, where I take the time to get to know the person behind the performer. Now's your time to let your people know that we're here on Facebook, on YouTube. If you are joining us from Spotify later, we say hello to you as well. I'm going to take this opportunity now to kick it to my fellow co-hostess, Miss Cayenne.
Greetings, everyone. It's Miss Cayenne. I'm a poet, and I know it. Now, if you're watching this, you're probably like, okay, why is the poet sitting in the car? But life happens. You're doing things, multitasking, but I'm not going to miss tonight's show. So I want you to, as Simply Sherry stated, get your stuff together. Come on in the room so you can have a good seat for this wonderful show, wonderful guest. My particular segment is on second Sundays. It's called Passion Projects, The Root Behind the Why, where we delve into the story of the artist, their story, their journey, and ask the question, why? Why did you choose that? Why are you doing that? So, but this is not my segment tonight. We're settling in for a wonderful conversation with, like we said, a friend. So I'm gonna kick it. I'm gonna kick it to the one, the only girl genius.
I had to unmute myself. Hey, everybody, how are you? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Danielle, also known as Girl Genius. It's a pleasure to be with you this lovely Sunday. My week is the first week of every month, first Sunday of every month specifically, and it's called Let's Talk About the ... usually books. But I actually focus on all things like tangible product. Like I've had playwrights now and filmmakers and authors. And so we kind of talk about the process of how to get from here's this idea in my head to I have a finished product that it's out there and available for the rest of the world. And all the creative things that go into making those things happen. Again, I am super excited to be here. We have somebody that's been on our list for quite some time. And actually, since the very beginning, since the origination of the list. If I showed y'all the list, it's amazing. We have been on the same list of people since we started the show back in 2020. And it takes some time because we know so many dope people to get through this list and schedule people accordingly. But it ain't my week. It belongs to that woman over there all the way. Well,
oh, you pointed right.
I pointed right. I pointed right. It's on my phone. It's on my. It looks like it's on my left, but it's my right. It's like really crazy. So I'm going to kick it to this week's host, KaNikki J.
Yay! I am unmuted. If you hear a baby in the background, she's mine. She's our not so silent co-host from here on out until she gets some words. So this is what's going to happen. So welcome. This is the time of the show that I usually say, tell everybody, your mama and them, that we are live. Listen, you definitely want to take some time and be live with us. I mean, this is going to be a great replay, but you definitely want to be able to ask this person some questions. And I also say that if you are looking at us, I just shared this to my Facebook page, but be sure to like, to follow, to subscribe. And if you would like to support us financially so that we can continue to keep the mic on, scrolling at the bottom of your screen, you see our Cash App. It is Keep the Mic On. We volunteer our time since March 2020 to be here. And we volunteer our time for free. Everybody that comes on here volunteers their time for free. We have been coined a master class, so it should definitely not be free. But if you want us to continue to keep the mic on, these platforms are not free. So if you would like to drop some coinage in the Cash App, we definitely appreciate it. Now, let me just say, I am super duper uber excited, and so is my mama and my sister. Shout out to my mom and my sister that told me to remind them that I was going live when I brought our special guest on for tonight, right? I said, I am interviewing Droopy Anderson, also known as the Broke Baller, right? And they were like, oh, Drew, we got to see this. We got to see it live. So if my mama and my sister wants to see it live, trust me, you want to tell other people that we are live right now. So I came on the scene and Droopy was already on the scene. That's what I'm saying, right? If you have seen me interview, I'm gonna get into this. If you have seen me during my poet laureate term, I am the first Black poet laureate of Alexandria, Virginia. And if you've seen me do interviews, you have known that I have mentioned him. If you've seen me do my prep to publish workshops, you have known that I have mentioned him. But I'll cover that during the interview time, right? So usually I read and I craft interview questions for people that I don't know, but I've known Droopy, the broke baller, since 20 years, for 20 years. Okay. I know we look young and things, you know what I'm saying? We look like we're in our 20s. But yeah, I've known this person for 20 years. So I definitely wanted to be an organic type of thing, right? So I'm gonna read you a little bit of his bio, and I will say, like I always say, by the time I read the bio is expired, especially for a person like Drew Anderson, who continues to do things in this area and beyond. So I'm gonna read a little bit of this bio. So a science teacher turned teaching artist, poet, parodist turned playwright, and a marathon runner turned motivational speaker, Drew Anderson is the founder and co-host of Spit That, the longest running open mic in the nation's capital, and the co-creator of the critically acclaimed stage productions Push the Button, coming in spring 2023 to Keegan Theater in DC. And From Gumbo to Mumbo, which I seen, it was nominated for a 2020 Helen Hayes Award for Outstanding Production. Of course it was, because it was amazing. And Theater for Young Audiences. Winner of Best of at the 2019 Charm City Fringe Festival. A nationally credited teaching artist, Drew has merged his passions for entertainment and education into arts. He initiated Spoof School, which is so funny, and the Crunk. I gotta find out what this Crunk Academy is. Do I know what Crunk? Did he put what Crunk stands for? Nope. Crunk Academy, bringing his unique spin on hip hop, comedy, parody, drama, and poetry to stages, virtual and physical, local and international. Please welcome our amazing, spectacular guest. I think he's here. Here he is. Drew Anderson!
Wow. What's up, KaNikki? Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor.
20 years.
Yeah.
20 years. And it's probably been longer than 20 years, actually. 20-something years.
Yeah, definitely.
20-something years. It's an amazing thing. Listen, I'm going to have you open with a piece before I start talking, because you know I be talking. So I'm going to give you the screen for a minute, let you open with a piece, and then we're going to come back and talk about the thing.
Sounds good to me. Welcome to the misinformation age, where we have unprecedented access to madness, which no one bothers to fact check. And everything a person can do wrong in an argument, we're doing it more publicly, passionately, and often, kid. See, right thinks the middle is left. Left thinks the middle's right. Middle keeps getting hit with spit from left and right spittle fight. And nuance is truly lost once the middle is silenced, which only leaves demagogues, extremism, and violence. Confirmation bias, a worse crime than doubting Thomas. He just believed what he could see. We just believe what we acknowledge. See, when swimming in a sea of opinions, we tend to get seasick. So we only seek opinions which we already agree with. Fake news, falsehood flies, truth limps along. Lies will laugh at the truth, then be at the finish line like, finish strong. I'm not sure it's her quote, but I'll give Lovey Ajayi the credit. Lies will go around the world 3 times while the truth is still dressing. Cult of personality. Not so much what is said, but rather who be saying it determines the way in which it's read. And if your argument is strong, I cannot just defer, so I'll just change the whole subject with a non sequitur. And even if my counter argument falls ridiculously, I'll just conflate concepts to confuse you. False equivalency. All these lapses in logic I have yet to show the worst, because good old cancel culture about to get its own verse. Now, cancel culture. Is it really just adult accountability? Well, if we break down the root word, then we can really see. So you can't hold someone accountable with no account. Thus, an untrustworthy one was called no count or no account. So what is an account? rapport, some basis for relationship. But cancellation ain't the same as redemption or trying to save some shit. It's bent on punishment. We binge on revenge. But does the penance fit the sin or the means justified by the ends? Cancel culture. Say or do the wrong thing and you're through. Well, what's the right thing to do? It's not my job to educate you. Okay, great. Let's say it ain't your job to educate. Should it then be your job to eliminate or humiliate? See, that's why I call it gotcha, because they can't wait to spot you affiliated with what they hate and add you to their roster. And if you still don't feel me, in the last verse it's on, I'll show you how all the above combine to form the perfect storm. Now, let's say someone starts a rumor about you. Plainly, it ain't true, but no one checks for evidence, so it becomes true. Well, that's fake news. Now, if I already don't like you, but I do like the liars, then that's cult of personality and confirmation bias. So you defend yourself. And I respond with the most non-topical nonsense you ever heard. Well, that's a non sequitur. The issue was your values. I make it about your shoes. And you be like, y'all, really? Well, that's a false equivalency. Then for good measure, I'll tell everyone who listened that just because I dissed them, everybody should dismiss them. And you'll all excommunicate that asshole, won't you? Well, what you call that? I call it cancel culture. Then we have the nerve to believe that all the worst things that ever happened in history would never happen again, you see. But imbecilically, we'll see the same things cyclically until the day that we all learn to think critically. That's that piece. It's called The Misinformation Age.
Love it. I love it. How old is that piece?
I wrote it like a year ago. I wrote it like Thanksgiving, like the day before Thanksgiving. Like that's one of my favorite times of year because I ride down with my sister, one of my favorite people.
Oh, wow.
It's to Charlotte, from DC to Charlotte to go see our family. And the conversations that me and my sister have driving from DC to Charlotte is always one of the best, but Thanksgiving, that's always one of the best conversations I have all year. And so I started that piece. I was in the car, she was driving, and by the time we got to Charlotte, the piece was finished.
Wow.
And the next day, I think was the day before Thanksgiving. And I went jogging and I memorized it while I was walking. Actually, yeah, I was walking because my knee was bugging. Wasn't jogging. But yeah, that piece is like less than a year old because I wrote it the Thanksgiving week of last year.
Yeah, I thought I asked that because I was like, have we always had cancer culture? Has that been a
cancel culture? Yeah. I wrote that piece because I was really, for the last couple of years, I've been really stewing about the way that we argue. I've seen some things happen in our scene / community, and hopefully later we'll get to talk about the difference between a scene and a community. But I've seen some things go down in the name of so-called social justice that really trouble me. I've seen people fighting oppression in ways that are oppressive. And I don't see enough people talking about that. And it really bothered me. So, and it's funny, when I do that piece, I feel like I get usually one or two reactions. I get people either like kind of staring at me like I said too many SAT words or something. Like, oh, I don't know, maybe they uncomfortable because I'm calling out some stuff they're doing. And peace to Dr. Dupaz, I see in the comments, much love.
Shout out.
Or I get people saying, yo, I've been waiting for somebody to say the things you said in that poem. And it's like, I feel mixed with that because on one hand, it feels validating to know that I'm not the only one who feels these ways. But on the other hand, I'm like, well, if you were waiting for someone to say it, why didn't you say it? What happened to that whole thing about be the change that you want to see? And, you know, we're in a real interesting historical spot just as far as how we deal with critical thinking and all the things. And so I've been doing a lot of reading and a lot of reflecting, and I'm ready to talk about some of this stuff. Uncomfortable, unpopular, whatever. It's time. Let's go.
Yes. All right. Uncomfortable, unpopular. You already listen. It comes a time in Keep the Mic on any of the platforms that somebody says something, you know, that we consider, you know, a quotable. You already we're just like 14 minutes in, and you already said a quotable. Before you already said it.
Yo, yes. I see Dr. Dupaz in the comments, and much respect to the doc. You know, she just interviewed me like a week ago, and. First of all, you know, with imbecilically, I might have taken a chance because I might have made up that word. So thank you for the props for being a teacher and introducing the word. I might have been introducing it to myself because I don't know. I was just
We definitely had Dr. Paz on here, so definitely shout out and peace to that queen, that doctor, peace to that doctor, right? So many things have happened in these last 20 years, right? So we got to go back, right? Because, it's somebody on here. Unfortunately, I have to ask those questions that you get asked on all the interviews, right? Because we can't assume that we know you and we had you on, we call it a fight list. I don't know how I got you by myself. We have a fight list where we interview one person for all the segments on a fifth Monday. I don't know how I got you by myself, but I say shout out to me for myself because you definitely was on our fight list. So we have to go back, to like the beginning of poetry, right? So this is the Poets and Platforms. So we have to talk about the poet, you as a poet, and then we have to talk about the platforms. Let me see. Now, when I met you, were you already a teacher?
Depends on when you met me. Well, in a sense, we're all teachers, right? We teach with our example and all those things. But formally speaking, I started my educational career when I was at grad school at Howard. I went to Howard and I stuck around for grad school a little bit. And when I was in grad school, I was teaching biology labs to the undergrads. So that's kind of where my teaching started. And then I formally started as a full-time teacher in 2001. I was a high school science teacher. Yeah, I was a high school science teacher. What had happened was a friend of mine was teaching summer school at this high school, but he came on to teach math, and they had him teaching science because the science teacher had just quit. So he was like, "Hey, you got a science degree, right? Why don't you come and take this summer gig, teaching summer school for science, so I can move over and do what I came to do, which was teach math." And I did it, and it was a lot we learned from each other. When I realized my students were gaming me about being able to leave summer school early because they had jobs, I came in. That was a Friday when I found that out, and I came back on Monday on some Tupac stuff with a camouflage bandana, called the soldier rag, and some baggy, like khakis and some boots. I was Tupac out. I was bumping like Machiavelli album, and I was like, "This is how it's gonna go." I came on my whole, rowdy bout it teacher thing. But we learned from each other, and from that experience, the school said, "Hey, if you want the full-time job in the fall, it's yours." And I had my cuts and bruises and scrapes, and I learned as I went. And I don't think I was a great teacher when I first started out, but I learned.
Yeah,
I learned with my students, and I think I became a better educator, someone who, more understood where they were coming from to try to find a place where we could go together. And we endured 9/11 together. I remember it well. My first year as a teacher, 9/11 happened. I'm cussing my students out. Next thing you know, they're evacuating the building because you could see the smoke from the Pentagon across the way because my school was at waterfront. And but when you say, so your question was I a teacher when you met me? Probably. It depends on the exact year you met me.
Were.
Let's just say yeah. Let's just say yeah.
You were. Yeah. I don't remember how we met. I don't remember the beginning. What I do remember is that you had this book, right? I do remember the book situation, right? And I don't know if you've seen, I'm gonna have to send you some of my interviews where I give you all the props, right? I always mention you. Of course, you don't have to take my prep to publish workshop, right? But anytime I do the prep to publish workshop, I always say the reason I do this workshop is because when I came on the scene, it was two people that I met that had books, you and Brandy Forte.
Wow.
Right, who I also interviewed here, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I guess maybe the Southern hospitality or something for me to approach you and ask, how, because I asked people like, how did you get this book, got the book in the hand? It was like it was a secret society or something. Everybody didn't want to tell me. And I have to tell y'all that Drew was like, I did this, and this. Here's all the information and everything. I hadn't had anyone to do that for me, right? So I was like, wow. And I actually followed what he said. I used the same printer he used. All of that. I did everything that you said. This is what I did to get my book out there. I did everything that. And additionally, I started a publishing company. Okay. Because I was like, self-publishing back then is good, but self-publishing wasn't the thing back in the day. Because why? Because y'all don't edit. That's why self-publishing was not the thing. Because it didn't, the self-published books weren't edited. So that was probably the thing. But so you've heard me mention Droopy, and that's why That's why. That was the start of, me publishing. The start of, I took a class to start an LLC, to start Great Publishing, and that's how it happened. That's how I wanted to publish a book. I needed something in hand, and Drew was the one who told me how to do everything. And you don't meet people that genuine that's going to sit down and tell you, this is what I did. Here's the contacts and everything. So that was not my introduction to you, but that was like the first thing I would say. The first thing that you gave me, I would say that was the beginning of something. That was, and it's been many things. It's been many things. So I definitely want to listen. Let's talk about you as a poet. When did you become a poet?
It's so cliche to say I was born a poet, but I think one of the things a poet is someone who has a special relationship with words, who looks at words as weapons, spells, just something to dance with, play with. Just like some people love playing with toys, playing with video games. I did that too, but playing with words just was always fun to me. And working with words and learning their power and learning not to abuse that power, all of it. It's like a religion, almost like a spiritual vocation. So when you say, when did I become a poet? I think I became a poet when I became a person. Like, it just, my mother was at different times a librarian, an English teacher, and a bookseller. So the way I look at it is, my mother did everything you could do with books except write them. And so when she had me, that was the writing of the books. See what I'm saying?
Wow.
That's my point. I think I'm here to capitalize on it and to realize the words that my mother was always inculcating. So yeah, I think that's my answer for when I became a poet.
Yes. When did you discover the performance aspect of poetry?
I just always was, I was a kid with an attitude. Like, all right, right now I'm sitting on this blanket. All of this is gifts from my friend Luna, right? Well, not, first of all, shout out for the mural here. This
I was gonna ask that. It wasn't part of my poetry thing. I was gonna ask that. Who did this mural?
Amazing painter. This was a gift from Dwayne. Yeah, this is a gift from Dwayne Lawson Brown. I'm gonna give you a little bit more of it.
Wow, that's dope.
Yeah. And
I have a painting by her too. That's also a self-portrait of mine. Whatever.
Word. So shout out to Rashada Pulanjira. Dwayne Lawson Brown, my partner, would spit that. He gifted me this a couple months ago for the 20th anniversary. Spit that. But I'll show you all this stuff to show you my Spider-Man fixation. This blanket is like a Spider-Man wear. That was handmade by my friend Luna. I call her Lunaverse. So was this pillow. It's a little, it says Drew on one side. It's been through some things, so it's not as full as it used to be. But then you got Spidey over here, because she knows I love Spidey. And then my newer gift, she made me this pillow right here. And on the bottom, this is my name in Braille, right?
Oh.
And it's also got like therapeutic things going on with the aromas, because that's the thing she does with this this business she has called Be Feels, where she makes sensory healing products. I don't think I'm describing it as well as she could, but I say all that to say all this Spider-Man stuff is up in here, and there's plenty more. I ain't gonna show you all that. But when you say, when did I find out about the performance piece? Spider-Man was always my hero, and one of the reasons why is he was a geek. He was a little skinny, nerdy kid, but he had this secret life where he was amazing and spectacular. And that's what I found with poetry and with performance. I was a little skinny, geeky kid, but with my words, I was a superhero. And so I remember in elementary school when they did, dang, what is the name of that story with the lady who had the never-ending pot, the magic pot of pasta? Well, it was like she was like a witch kind of, and she could make her. She had this pot that would not stop making pasta, and I was invited to play her. And even with being a little geeky kid, people recognized something to me like, this kid has an attitude. Let's use it. And I was a little smart mouth kind of kid, but when you say the performance piece, when I realized that it's like that quote, if you tell me something, I'll forget. If you show me, I'll remember. But if you involve me, then I'll master. I'm not getting it exactly. I think it was like Ben Franklin. But when I learned that bringing something to life for people is a special gift, and they will remember you more than if you just said it. So acting it out. Plus, I just talk with my hands and stuff. I've always been just a real sort of expressive person.
It's
So
a, I don't know, maybe that's a Southern thing, right? To
yeah.
talk with your hands, kind of, you know what I'm saying? Maybe that's a Southern thing. I knew when I met you, I said, he's from the South. Somewhere. Tell people where you're from, because everybody don't know.
I'm from New Orleans, baby, from uptown, from the 13th ward. Maybe that's why I like 13 so much, because that's my ward.
That's your ward.
So from Gumbo to Mumbo is I know I'm getting ahead of myself because you were probably gonna ask me about from Gumbo to Mumbo anyway, but I just wanted to explain the shirt. Stregonona, thank you. I see in the comments somebody shouting. Yes, okay. I was Stregonona. Yep, in elementary school. Word up. From Gumbo to Mumbo comes from the fact that I'm from New Orleans, and Dwayne Lawson Brown, my creative partner, collaborator, and just dear friend and sibling, basically, is from DC, home of the Mumbo sauce. I'm from the Gumbo, he's from Mumbo. Together, we from Gumbo to Mumbo. So that's where I'm from, New Orleans, and it shows up. I've lived in DC now longer than I lived in New Orleans, but New Orleans is all up in me. It's who I am. You're gonna hear my accent. You're gonna feel that flavor. You're gonna taste that gumbo. That's who I am.
When you go home and you come back, because I mean I know you still call New Orleans home, right? Because I still call Alabama home, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's home. When I say when I go home, still home. When you go home and you come back, is your accent thicker than it was?
Yep.
Why is that? Why is that? Right? You go home and you get the accent back. So you come back and people are like, "Where are you from?"
Yeah, you were swimming in those waters. You were around all that energy. It's funny. I went to New Orleans a couple of months ago for the Essence Fest, and I went to the store to get a couple ponchos because I knew it was about to rain that week. And I got in a conversation with the lady who was ringing me up, and somehow I was telling them, oh, she was asking me if I wanted a bag. I said, it depends. You're going to charge me for it? And she was like, no, where they do that at? I said, yeah, where I live, they charge you for bags. She was like, oh, I can't live nowhere where I got to pay for the bag and the groceries. And just that little bit of home, that mother wit and that home cooked soul, I was like, I'm home. Like, this is my people.
Yes, definitely. I'm mad they started charging for the bags in Virginia, too. I'm mad at that.
Maryland,
I'm like, what is it? 5 cent a bag? 5 cent a bag for real.
And not just like food places and grocery stores. I went to Marshall's in Baltimore.
They do charge you.
They asked me if I wanted a bag and charged me for it. I was like, this is new. So
you go to the $1.25 tree now. It's the $1.25 tree that I affectionately call it.
Yeah.
No Dollar Tree. They charge you for the bag. So it's really you get a bag, it's $1.30 tree. You get a bag as well. Yes. So we have I'm trying to remember because you back in the day, like you and Delrika, shout out to Delrika Andrews, who had For Love of Poetry, right? Who had this website that posted all of the venues, right? So we can find out where to go in the DMV area. So she would post all of the venues, all of the list of venues. And you used to do an email list and tell us everywhere where to go as well. And this was before social media, y'all. Listen, there was no social media, right? So we would go to venues to find out about other venues. So I would go to a venue, they would tell me where, and then tomorrow night you can go this way, and then they'll say Monday through Friday you can go these different places. So and then you have your pen and paper, your notebook, and you write down where to go or whatever. So this is how we did things before social media, and then we get an email list, and people like Drew would send out a list and say these are all the places that you can go. And then Delrika had the website. You and Delrika were the only people I knew that had a website. Baby, nobody had websites. Like, what is a website? Nobody had that. And I remember, like, you went on. Did you go on 106 in Park or something? What did you go on that your website crashed?
Yeah, it was like 2004. I was on 106 in Park back when Free and AJ was the host. And it's funny because
I know my people.
Yeah, Free was alone, which was fine with me. But yeah, with the website, shout out to Delrika because she did, to my knowledge, she did it first. And not only that, but she designed my website.
Did she?
And then kind of in honor of her, that's why I had the page where I shouted out other, venues that I've been to. If you went to her website, hers was more complete because she knew more poets and more poetry places. And, she just was big on encouraging me to make a business of this and put myself out there more. So she just was super, I can't say enough good things for Delrica. But she is a pioneer in connecting poets, recognizing the value of networking, and encouraging us to be professionals in our craft and demand that our craft be respected as a profession. She was a pioneer in that. And so I just want to big up Delrica for that.
Definitely. So how did you get on 106 in Park? How'd that happen?
I feel like
I want to pause and say some people are going to have to Google 106 in Park. They don't have no idea.
Yeah, how about that?
Okay. How about that?
The 106 in Park was a show kind of like, I guess, TRL or any of these shows that would show videos back when they had shows that show videos, because now you can just stream whatever you want. Who watches TV to look at music videos? Right. But back then, pre-internet, I can't say pre-internet, but really pre-YouTube.
YouTube, yeah.
If you wanted to watch videos, you might watch like the Jukebox channel, or you might watch like BT, MTV channels like that. So this was a live show where they had an audience in-house, and they would interview the performers, the rappers, and things like that, and they would have a countdown of the most requested videos by their audience. All right. So they sometimes would have this thing called I don't remember what the name of their talent segment was, but I'm gonna be mad because I'm gonna remember it when I get off. But every now and then they would do this talent segment where they would take a less known person who had a talent, and they would have them share their talent. And a friend of mine who I went to Howard with, I believe her name is Janae Johnson. I really hope I'm saying it right. But we went to Howard together, and she remembered me, and she's like, "Hey, why don't you come do, one of your poems on this segment on 106 in Park?" And so I had to super edit it to make it like a minute long and stuff like this. And then I kind of like forgot the new version. And so it didn't make all the sense I wanted to make. And people who knew the poems saw how much it was kind of butchered. But the people who didn't know me didn't know that. So the key, and it's funny because I got a taste of the hate you get with fame. I got the love and the hate all in one because they put my website across the screen while I was performing. And it was people just putting like hate rhymes and stuff about how I was and all that. I ain't deserve to be next to free. This cornball dude called Jamaican Prince. I'm proud of his name. Just did this little, his first line was, "I'm Jamaican and you're not." And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? I never claimed to be Jamaican. But people are just like obsessed with fame. It's this thing where it makes people crazy. It makes them lose their perspective. And so they'll try to eat you alive when they don't even know you. But at the same time, I got a lot of love. I had people, friends of ours who know the poem who were like, I know, it ain't like you wanted it to be, but I ain't gonna make a big deal of it, but I'm proud of you. And then so I had all the feels. I had, happiness that I had the opportunity, disappointment in myself that I didn't use the opportunity as well as I could have. And just everything that comes with fame. Like, cause my website got shut down.
It crashed.
When, like, after they put my website up, that showed me how ready I wasn't for fame. Because they put my website up and so many people were hitting it and commenting that it broke the site. So and I keep Broke Baller now. I don't do as much with it, but I keep it as kind of a vanity site, but also a place where I can be ratchet. Where every now and then, if I just want to do something that doesn't have to be politically correct, doesn't represent Drew Anderson, the teaching artist, I can have some separation between Spoof School as a brand, my work as a teaching artist, and Drew Anderson, aka Droopy, the wild dude who just feel like saying some shit. Every now and then, you need those different avenues. And, eventually I probably will build a website for my teaching artist work that's separate from that. For now, that's the website I have. So it's over my head right now, and it's a part of my history, and I'm all right with that.
Yes. Why Broke Baller? What is a broke? First of all, what is a broke baller?
All right. So a broke baller is somebody who makes $1 out of 15 cents, somebody who makes lemonade out of a piece of lime and a packet of sweet and low, somebody who makes stuff out of nothing. And broke baller came from a few places. One, when I came to DC, I started hitting U Street, hitting the venues, hitting Bar None, Mangoes, not Republic Gardens. I always mix up Republic Gardens and Bohemian Caverns, the different places. There was
but you did hit Republic Gardens too, though. That's why.
How about that? Yeah,
you did hit both of them.
Too. And that's part of the broke baller thing too. I was a little kind of bohemian little dude. I fell into the artsy circles, and I liked that, and I felt that. At the same time, I liked partying. I liked Jay-Z and Bad Boy and all that stuff. When I was at Howard in the late 90s, it was like a party capital, and I was at every party, and I loved it. So I was trying to show that you can walk in more than one world. You don't have to, people try to label you and put you in a box, but Broke Baller represents paired opposites, kind of like Slum Village, right? Mm-hmm. And so also Broke Baller was a play on OK Player, because I was a big Roots fan, still am. And when I put my book out, people kind of can, I don't want to say knock, but people don't give the same prestige to self-publishers, because they feel like, some people feel like you self-published because you couldn't get traditionally published.
Right.
And so I wanted to counteract that. When I put out my first book, I wanted it to look as much as possible like a quote-unquote real book.
Oh, I should have grabbed that book. I got it right over there. I got it
right here myself.
I got it.
But I wanted my book to look as much as possible like a real book. So that's getting my Library of Congress control number, my ISBN with the little code and the barcode and all that jazz. And so, peace, Mr. Carroll. You did. What I said was, so when I looked in books that had been published, I saw, okay, they have a cover page, not just the cover, but they have a cover page, and it says the name of the book, the name of the author, the name of the publishing house. And I realized, man, I don't have a publishing house. So I just made one up. So I said, Broke Baller Books. We give wings to words, making them fly. Right. And I thought about the Roots, and on all their albums, they say, OK Player, giving you true notes since 1987. So I said, Broke Baller, giving you true broke since 2001. Because that was the year that I first published my first book. Mm-hmm. So Broke Baller comes from, with the Black Rage, I was for it. I was like, yes, about it, political. But at the same time, I always like to be different. And so when every other poet was like, I'm black and I'm mad, my thing was, okay, but all of life isn't being black and mad. So, and there are some things about being black that aren't so angry. And so I wanted you to be ready for something different as soon as they introduced me. Mm-hmm. So as soon as they introduced, give it up for Droopy the Broke Baller, some people are laughing. Some people are like, they know me, so they know what to expect. Some people are laughing because it's a funny sounding name. Some people just throw it off. But either way, I already have you paying attention. And then by the time I get to the stage, you're ready to engage because you already know you're about to get something different. So that's what the Broke Baller thing was about.
First of all, I'm gonna assume, since you just gave us a memorized poem, that you still memorize your poetry.
I do.
You do. How, Mr. Anderson, do you memorize all of these pieces? How does it happen? Tell the people.
I don't memorize everything, but it just really takes practice. Sometimes I like to run a lot and walk. And so it helps saying it to yourself and remembering the scenery of where you're at, because then when you're stuck on a line, you'll say, I remember that tree. I walked past that tree when I was on that line. And the visual cues will help you remember stuff. One way that I memorize things is I start with the first line. Okay, memorize that. Now the first line and the second line. Keep saying them till you get them both. Now first, second, third. And so what ends up happening is the beginning of the poem you remember really well, because those are the lines that you went over the most, because they were always a part of your process of memorizing them because you started there. Then the last lines you remember because they're freshest on your mind. And so that's kind of my philosophy or technique around memorization. It becomes, and I just always liked memorization. I like memory games. The little memory game where you had the cards turned upside down and you flip them and try to find pairs? I could do that for hours. I did that as a kid. I love stuff like that. To me, it's just a mental exercise, memorizing things. So, and also I'm an actor, and actors have to be able to memorize their lines. So it's a technique, it's a game, and it's a way of making. Also, this really helps. Me and Dwayne have started doing workshops in DC jail, and bringing a lot of stuff in DC jail in jail period is a hassle. First of all, you can't bring your phone, let alone computer or anything like that. You could bring notebooks and stuff like that, but I don't really handwrite things like that anymore. I usually write my poetry or whatever I'm working on in my phone. So memorizing a lot of stuff helps. If I'm having a conversation with the inmates and a piece comes up that would be a good example of what we're talking about, I don't have to be like, oh man, I didn't bring it. You know what I mean? It's here. So it helps. It comes in handy.
Yeah, I do a thing like that in memorizing poems, like memorizing the first line, the second line, and also what I do, a little tip for people who want to memorize. Like, of course, nobody knows. Like Drew talked about in the beginning, people who knew his piece knew that it wasn't the piece, but the people who didn't know the piece didn't know that it was that wasn't the piece, right? So it's your poem or whatever you're memorizing, right, and whatever you're putting out. Nobody really knows how you're supposed to do it. So anytime I drop, like when I'm trying to memorize, and I do this in the car. Like I've been a lot of traffic in the DMV area, has a lot of traffic. So in traffic, I recite poems. That's what I do, right? In poems. Yes. So I would, if I forgot, I would recover. I don't go back. So I just recover, like however I would recover if I was in front of an audience, right? I don't go back so you'll know I messed up. I just keep going in a recovery type of thing. So yeah, that's one of the things I do.
With me, I'm in boot camp. Like when I'm rehearsing by myself, I do the opposite. If I mess up a line, I gotta start over. Now I wouldn't start over in front of people, and that's a good point that you're making. But I'm boot camp. I'm like, yo, if you mess up, you gotta start over, and that pressure for me helps me because I'm like, I don't want to start the whole thing over. I like the poem and everything, but I'm trying to get through it. And no, actually, here's what I do. I won't start over, but for every time I mess up, I have to do it again. So if I go through the poem and I've dropped 2 lines, that means I have to do the whole thing again 2 times. So yeah, that's the kind of boot camp I put myself.
Is you boot camping yourself. Wow. Wow. Let me see. I wrote down something. Okay. I wrote down something while you were doing your poem because I said I wasn't going to write any questions down. But so tell us, you're in your 40s now, right?
Yeah, I'm 44.
Man, come on, 44, right? I'm older than you. But anyway, I ain't going to tell people how old I am, but I'm older than you. I'm just going to say I'm older than Drew. What was in your 20s, 30s, and 40s? 20s, 30s, and 40s. What is the most what word I want to say, surprising place that you have performed in your 20s, 30s, and 40s?
Wow. This is one of those questions where I'm going to think of a really good answer later.
Right, because you know, in the beginning, you're writing, like back in the day, if I'm writing a bio, right? So I'm gonna write, I performed at Mango's. I performed at Bar None. I performed at Spit That, right? So that's what, you know, people are in this area, you know, oh, you were featured. I was featured at Spit That, right? So I'm writing that thing down. But then now I'm like the Kennedy Center, right? So now like your thing has changed, right? Because you have, you know, evolved into bigger things. So
surprising. Well, I would say recently I was invited to Chicago to open up for the Erickson Institute's Executive Fellows Dinner, and they're an organization that deals with education. And I was in a Zoom doing the poem that I kicked this off with, The Misinformation Age. And an educator who was on that Zoom saw that piece and said they wanted me to come open up for that educators conference with that poem to frame the way that they communicated with each other. And to me, that was an honor because my thing is, I don't need everybody to think like me, but I do need everybody to think. And that's why the poetry I'm doing now is on that tip. And I really appreciate the fact that an educators conference would invite me to do that poem. Because to me, that's better than winning a slam. You know what I mean? I now am possibly impacting policy and framing the way that educators communicate with each other and with their students. So to me, that's more meaningful than necessarily like winning a slam or something like that. And so I like the fact that my poetry is finding different places now, going to places that I haven't taken it before. It was surprising, I suppose, when my poetry ended up in a 2-person show from Gumbo to Mumble. It's funny, I saw you interview, it was you. You interviewed Sekou Andrews, who's always been a hero of mine. And when he did The Word Begins with his partner, Steve Connell.
Yep.
All right. When I saw that in my heart, I was like, I want to do something like that, but I didn't really know how to go about it. And to me, From Gumbo to Mumble is me and Dwayne's something like that. It's realizing what we could do with these words. From Gumbo to Mumble started with a conversation about bad mumble sauce and why it's important to have good mumble sauce. From that came this whole story about home, authenticity, origin, New Orleans, DC, relationships, politics, all that. And we ended up winning the Charm City Fringe Festival. You know what I mean? That was surprising for us. We
Right.
knew it was good, but we were up against people who just do that, who just travel the world and enter
Do that.
fringe festivals with their one-person show or their production or whatever have you. And here we are with our poetic production. Granted, it was kind of unfair because it's pieces that we had been workshopping for years. Some of the stuff was new, written just for the play, but some of it was stuff that we had written years ago because it was like a loose story following our poetry. And we had so much chemistry and rapport with each other. We know our pieces and each other's pieces so well that on one hand, it's like, why wouldn't we win? But on the other hand, it's like, why would we when we were up against people who just travel and do festivals? So we were like I don't know, I'm not finding the word that I really want, but we were the surprise. We were the it's a word for when somebody comes out with this weapon and that you didn't know that they had, but we were that. So that I would say is a surprising place that our poetry turns up in a theatrical, poetic hip hop production, like Push the Button, which I'll tell you more about later.
Right. It's an amazing production. I don't know if I came to the first show, but I came to the first running of the shows, right? Was on the front row because definitely, wanted to support and be there. And it was amazing. Sometimes when you put poetry in the theater sense, it's real corny. I hate to say it like that, but it's real corny. And it wasn't corny. It was great. I was like, this is amazing. I really enjoyed it. And I knew, of course, because I know you and Dwayne, who we also interviewed here. I know what from gumbo to mumbo, man. I knew from just reading it, right? I knew what it was going to be. And I'm glad you brought that up because I like to break down the bio, right? And it's like, well, let me say this. When writing a bio, it's so much stuff you really don't know what to put in it, right? You don't know what to highlight, right? You're trying to write a minimized bio so that I'm not here reading 20 years worth of what you've done, right? So let's see. Let's talk about the bio because we know like you have so many titles. Let's start here. When people say, "What do you do for a living?" What do you say?
Lately, I say teaching artists because that encapsulates a lot of the different relationships that I have where I'm able to navigate my life and create my own schedule. Like I don't work for any one organization. I work with organizations under the umbrella of what I do as a teaching artist, whether that's teaching public speaking and debate, whether that's teaching traditional educational academic curricula, but through the lens of arts integration. So using songwriting to teach math, using poetry to teach English, things of that nature. So I have a number of organizations that I work with where I go to different places, different schools and other academic settings to teach either the art form itself or to teach stuff that they already had to learn, but use art to do it. So the short answer, I would say is teaching artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then you can expound on that based on whatever. So you're not teaching in school anymore.
Yes and no. I haven't been a straight up full-time academic instructor since 2014. From 2001 to 2014, I taught at 3 different schools, middle and high school, as a science teacher, because that's what my degree is in. But in 2014, I took a leap. I went to bartending school so I would have something to fall back on. I recently saw an old Eddie Murphy interview where he talked about the philosophy of falling back on something. So that makes me rethink even seeing that. But it's what I did. Basically, I knew the restaurant industry because I had waited tables for years. So I said, I'm about to leave this school, not because I don't like it, but because even though I do like this school, it's the best school I've taught at, I'm still not fully fulfilled because I'm not doing as much with my art as I want to. So the fact that I'm at a great school that feels like a family, that lets me do me, that has a progressive attitude toward teaching, and I still don't feel like I'm doing everything I want to do with my art, that means it's really time to leave. After like a dozen years of teaching, it's time. And so I waited tables for like a year and just was scrambling and looking for different opportunities to, and that's not the first time that I left teaching to wait tables and be an artist. But this was like the last time. I was like, okay, let's do this. Sink or swim, let's figure this out. And I discovered teaching artistry through friends like Bomani and Black Root. And they introduced me to organizations that helped me bridge education and art. I had the benefit of already having been a teacher, so I knew how a lesson plan worked. A lot of teaching artists know their art, but they don't necessarily know how the educational system works and how to write a lesson plan. So I really had the advantage of already having been a teacher and an artist. So it was just a matter of putting it together. So having art that you just do naturally, like I do parodies, satire, all that stuff naturally. I always was a parodist. But when you have something that you do like breathing, you have to actually unpack your process to teach it to someone else. Like, no one taught me how to write parodies. It came naturally to me. But I had to think about my process now that I was going to teach it. And so organizations like Young Audiences in Maryland, now known as Arts for Learning Maryland, taught me how to break down my process to someone who doesn't already know how to do it. And that's where Spoof School came from. So Spoof School, teaching new parodies, helping students make learning fun by making fun of their learning. And I had to realize what I do when I'm spoofing something. Okay, I find a spoofable song. Well, that's a step called Rewind Selector. That's finding a song that's catchy, popular, and simple. Then the second step is called Captain Hook, recognizing that the hook is the captain of the song, and everything that worked well about the song is best seen in the hook. And so then the next step is called Bars, building academically relevant spoofs, right? And so that's taking, how can I take the rhyme scheme, the syllable count, and the theme of the song I chose and make my song, my verses sound as much as possible like the original while saying something entirely different. Then there's Get Crunk. Crunk stands for Creative, Rapturous, Unified, Natural, and Knowledgeable. And that's why I'm a good performer. And then finally there's Spoofer Cum Laude, where you graduate from Spoof School with a performance of this song that y'all wrote. And then from Get Crunk, which started out as a step in my Spoof School process, one of my mentors at Young Audiences said, "Hey Drew, I love the fact that you do the spoofs," because I was gearing up to do a summer program, a 6-week program with kids, and they were like, when you teach your art form, I love the fact you do the spoofs, but what if the kids don't just want to write spoofs? And also, you might be working with younger kids who writing period. So you do more. I've seen you, Drew. I've seen you do more than just do spoofs. So why don't you bring everything you do into it? So that's what Crunk Academy became. Crunk Academy is when I folded in not just the poetry and the parody and hip hop, but also comedy and drama. Just everything that I'm interested in. How can we take all this stuff and have it be brought to bear in the context of the things that y'all have to learn anyway? So that's what Crunk Academy is about.
Wow. I need to hire you on, not to do that, but just to teach people how to take, like you're talking about, taking your artistry, right, and making it a workshop, something that you want to teach, right? I need to hire you. I just shout out to myself for just being one of the fellows for the 2022 Academy of American Poets. Let me just say that I won the Poet Laureate grant, right? So they gave, I think it's 10 of us. It may be 13 of us, 10 of us, a $50,000 grant to teach. Because I'm going to teach, what I'm going to do is teach the business of poetry. So we're gonna talk about that. I'm gonna hire y'all. See, you're gonna be one of the people. I'm gonna hire Drew to do one of those things. So we're gonna talk about that, right? We're gonna talk about
Congratulations and thank you in advance.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna shout myself out. You better, I gotta get like Snoop won that award and say, I'd like to thank me for everything.
And Snoop also said, I got my game from my mama, so I like to thank my mama for giving me all this game. And I quote you, KaNikki, I quote you more than I think you know. Because this is a moment where when you said, I'm not just popping my collar, I'm popping my whole sleeve, right? I quote you when you said that. I quote you when you said, I stopped using the expression hold each other up. I'm saying hold each other down, I say hold each other up. And I quote you in the context that I think we'll talk about later. You had a poem where you said, too many relationships cease to exist because we've never had a conversation about what a relationship even is.
Yes.
Bookmark, because I want to talk about that later on when we talk about communities and creative communities and all that stuff.
Let's delve into that, because basically, first I want to ask, are you who you wanted to be when you grew up?
Who I wanted to be when I grew up, first of all, was Spider-Man. So yes and no. Then it was a doctor, so no. But in some ways, put it like this: I'm who I was supposed to be, and that's someone who is in the continual process of being a better me. And you know, I rise and fall, I succeed and fail, but in my heart, I want to be better. Intent is not enough, for sure. All the worst things that have been done in human history were done by people who thought they were right. So intent ain't enough. But am I who I wanted to be when I grew up? Yes and no. And the no is not laced with disappointment as much as it's laced with hope, because it's a continual process. You know, it's a continual process of being who you need to be. That's self-actualization. You know, that's all that Maslow hierarchy stuff.
Yes, yes. And I think the thing about, you know, you're taught to choose one major, right? When then you do that thing and you don't want to do that. Like, so we're taught to choose one thing, right? One thing, one person, one house, one everything, and not realizing that at different stages of your life you can do something else. You know what I'm saying? So it's like I'm still growing up. I'm still growing up. So wait a minute, hold on. Let's look back at the bio, because I want to talk about how did Spit That? Why the name Spit That, and it's DAT, y'all? Why the name Spit That, and how did this start?
How did Spit That start? Okay, so I'm from New Orleans. I came to DC to go to Howard, and I stuck around and became a teacher. In the midst of that, I was always everywhere that poetry was. I was obsessed with it. When I was at Howard, they called me the poet. Not to say that there weren't other really dope poets there, but I was just super visible. Any organization that had some type of open mic, I was in it or hosting it. Fashion shows, you wanted a poet, they hollered at me. I'm not saying I was the only one, but I definitely did my thing while I was there. And then leaving Howard, I was all about U Street, all about hitting up all the venues. Mangles was my favorite. Shout out to Rob Brown. And Raquel was teaching me how to be a host without even formally, technically doing that. You know what I mean? Just by watching her and how much she was herself. And she was funny and sardonic and real and organic and all the things. She was showing me how you could do that and do it well. And that was home. I loved being there. I loved the food. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the poetry. I loved rocking and sharing and getting all the stuff off my chest, all the above. Now, okay, so you said Spit That. So I was soaking up all this stuff from all these venues. And in about 2000, I met Complex. I don't remember exactly where, but I remember I was a regular at his event. He was at a place in College Park, basically on a campus of the University of Maryland College Park, called the Java Head Cafe. It was owned by a brother named Nat Cooper. Much love to Nat. He gave me my first shot as a host. But Com hosted a Wednesday night event called Poetry on the Side, and I was a regular there. I was always there eating chicken quesadillas, watching the poets, and sometimes I would feature. And it became my favorite spot. I really enjoyed it. I liked the way that Com hosted. He's super charismatic dude, make everybody comfortable. I just liked his style. And Nat was going to open another Java Head Cafe in DC, because remember, this is College Park. His original plan was to keep both of them open, but College Park has notoriously had like racial issues, and he never could prove who it was, but his windows were always getting broken. At the College Park site of Java Head, people would vandalize the joint, and he got tired of continuing to put the windows up, so he decided to just move Java Head to DC. All right, so it was a sad day for the College Park location and for all of us fans of Com's event, Poetry on the Side. But it's something I noticed with Com. When he really liked what you were saying, he would snap his fingers and be like, spit that, spit that, spit that. And so when they asked, Nat wanted to have a different host for the new venue, because remember, the original plan was to keep both open. So he was still going to do Poetry on the Side in College Park with Com, but in DC, he wanted to have another night with another host for a poetry event, because he saw how successful a poetry open mic could be in a coffee house. So he asked around, and just my name kept coming up. And he knew I was a regular. He saw the vibe. I knew the vibe. I knew what type of event he wanted to have, because I was a regular at his existing event. So I called the event Spit That when we started it. One, as a shout out to Com, but two, DAT, because that's how we talk where I'm from. You heard me. In New Orleans, we will take a word that starts with TH and make it a D.
Yeah, a D. That.
You know, how you do that there.
Do that.
So it was a shout out to where Java Head was coming from, and it was a shout out to where I was coming from. So that's why we called it Spit That. And we started in 2002. I want to say June of 2002, and I was 24 years old, and I would be blind.
It's calm.
Yeah, what's my man? Yo, so much love for this dude, and I'm glad he's back. And you know, he left writing a few times, but he's back. And
nice. I see what you did there.
I'm excited to see his comeback, because that's my dude right there. And yeah, that's how Spit That got started in 2002 when I was 24 years old. And at 44, I would be lying if I told you that I knew then what Spit That would become. But that's why you have to grow with the job.
Definitely. And I think, you know, you brought up Rob Brown, and who we haven't had on here to interview her. Schedule conflicts or something. And definitely she taught me a lot about hosting, not knowing she was teaching me a lot about hosting, and definitely calm as well. One thing I like the best about them is the way they moved along, right? They move, like when you go to bar none, like you sign up number 10, it's midnight. You come at 7 o'clock, it's midnight. You just getting on, right? But I love them that, you know, Rock could get 20 people on, you know what I'm saying, in a night. She's just, you know, keeping the crowd going or whatever. I really did. I appreciated that, right? So yeah. And you too. So what do you think is the job of the host? What is the job?
I've been waiting on this one. First of all, I want to remind you of a time that you asked me this like a dozen years ago. It was either you or someone on your behalf, because I was hosting the Newspers. For those who may not know, the Newspers is a National Underground Spoken Word Poetry Awards, a really dope event founded by great events founders, KaNikki J and 13 in Nazareth, right? And so I was honored to host it along with Dwayne Lawson Brown, my partner. And this is like 2011. This is like the last one I remember. I don't know if that was the last one, but that's the last one I remember. And we were hosting, and somebody for some type of behind the scenes footage or something was asking, what is your advice for a future host of the Newspers? And what I said then was, don't make it about you, make it about the show. Because if you make it about you and people aren't feeling you, then they won't enjoy the show. But if you make it about the show, then everyone's going to enjoy themselves. Now, that's more poetry. That's more hosting technique and strategy than straight up philosophy. It's kind of a philosophy, but that's simpler days. I've seen more now, so my answer has become more sophisticated. I want to give a shout out, if you fast forward some, to Jeff Johnson. Reason being, I watched your interview with him, and Jeff is one of the realest human beings I've ever met. And I have nothing but love for him and the whole Silent Treatment Entertainment family, and I hope that that's known. And if it wasn't known, I hope it's known now. Freaking in love, Calm, I see what you're saying. That I've learned from you more than you know. But speaking of learning people, I learned from Jeff. Jeff is, the reason I mention Jeff now is you're asking the question, what's a host job? And I would be hard pressed to answer the question more beautifully than Jeff did. Jeff talked about aligning chakras and painting the energy field of the venue the same color. At the best I felt about hosting spiritually, I probably felt something like that. How I want to feel about hosting, again, in my heart, is something like that. That being said, recent events have caused me to be more pragmatic about hosting. Like, I can't just tell you about the beauty. I have to tell you about the shit that makes this job difficult. So what's the host job? I'm going to start with my thesis statement of the host job is being on the ongoing job of realizing what the host job is and stepping up to those occasions. That's one. Two, it depends on what kind of event you're trying to run. But three, I'm going to say the host job is to not only read the room, but as my friend Eda Poet MC, and I also enjoyed your interview with him, he said, read the world.
Nice.
The conversation I had with him, he said, you can't just read the room, you got to read the world. And that goes into this whole ongoing job of realizing what the host job is. Depending on what type of event you are running, host could just be promoter MC. Host something like Spit That, you now become maybe chief of security, depending on the venue.
Come on with it. Come on.
Okay, you might head of household, because they say spit that as a family. They say spit that as church. So now you're a pastor. You know what I mean? You are growing into the job as the job grows. That's the job.
Nice.
And
Nice.
I want to give you a couple of examples here. Let's talk about what I call like the mercenary open mic. This is a situation where you're not necessarily all invested in the artistic integrity of it all. You didn't sign on to be a social justice activist, a community activist, and all this. You just wanted to do some hot shit. You wanted to make an event that you could sell tickets to. You apply the same formula that you would apply for maybe fashion shows, comedy shows, and sporting events. You just happen to be doing poetry because it's something you wanted to do. And I'm saying this to not even knock those people, because guess what? Knowing what you did and didn't sign on for is a very important life skill. And I've met artists whose attitude, and promoters whose attitude is, I express and experience community outside of this, with my friends, with my family, with my students if I'm a teacher. So when it comes to poetry, it's not everybody came to make friends or family. Some people came to make war because they're that serious about slam. Some people came to make money because they're that serious about being a promoter. Once again, I can't knock you. Just remember, some people, the place where you came to make war and make money, other people might actually have come to make community. And the ramifications of that conflict might be brought to bear upon you. As a poet, you might not want to be doing all this poetry about what a community activist and revolutionary radical you are, because somebody's going to call you on that if that's not the way they see you show up. It's not that that's not who you are. They just don't see it. But that's where conflicts arise. Now, so when you say mercenary open mic, that is the motto of host as promoter MC. Your job is to have a successful event. Your job is to make an event that's worth promoting and that people want to come to. Book hot features, set the feature up for success. You might not have an open mic. If you do have an open mic, the open mic is not the focus. You might have a curated closed mic. You might have all spotlight features. If you do have an open mic, this is what I mean by not being the focus. You might do things like, say, the whole way you even do the open mic is to set the feature up for success. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I'm saying all the, emotional and spiritual onus of taking care of the open mic performance, that's not necessarily a focus. So say, for instance, somebody signed the list at number 7. This is a first-time poet, or you've seen them perform before and they still at that shaking paper sort of real mellow stage. They sign up as number 7, you will put them as number 1 because you're trying to set up the energy and build it up toward the feature. Now, personally, I don't like doing stuff like that because I understand that public speaking is the biggest phobia in the world. More than snakes, spiders, scorpions, heights, drowning, tight spaces, all the things you could fear. There are people who fear this more than that. And that's just public speaking. That's before we even get into what you're publicly speaking. I'm talking about people are rigidly paranoid about standing on the stage and reading the ABCs. That's before you even get to what spoken word is. The fact that people are sharing their most personal and vulnerable experiences to a room full of strangers. So my attitude is, if you signed up as number 7 to make this just paralyzing process a little more easy for you, then the least I could do is put you at number 7 or as close as possible as you face the world's biggest phobia. But that's me. Going back to host as promoter MC, right? It's a business. It's not so personal. Now, opposite extreme, you want to host something like Spit That. Something that people say is their home, family, church. Featuring there is like serving Sunday dinner to your family. You want to get it right. Once again, these are not things I'm making up. These are things that people have said about Spit That. All right. Once again, 24-year-old Drew did not know that this would be church. I wanted it to be dope. I wanted it to be meaningful. I wanted it to be something that people liked and enjoyed and got some meaning from. But what it grew to be, I would be lying if I said I knew that at 24 years old. I wasn't doing this shit because it was fun. I enjoyed doing it. People seemed to get something out of it. I was given an opportunity and I took it. I had to grow with the job. And the job gets frustrating sometimes. The longer you've been doing this, first of all, generation gaps form. I'm going to tell you straight up. The people who come through Spit That now are not all the same people who were coming through 20 years ago.
No.
Who was at the front door.
Are they even poets? The people, are they even doing poetry anymore?
That
Maybe
part.
not.
When we started doing Spit That at Java Head Cafe in Brooklyn, you were our money mommy. You sat at the front and you chose to do this, volunteered to do this, just out of love. You a dope poet in your own right with your own stuff to do and your own work to promote, but you chose, because you believed in what we were doing, to sit there with that big old coffee mug and take people's $4 or $5 entry fee. just to show love and show community. That's because that's who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, fast forward.
I need a shirt that says "Money Mommy." I'm like, who's gonna design me a Money Mommy shirt right now?
I know somebody will do it, but check this out. 20
right.
years, it's a generation gap. Because I'm gonna tell you straight up, I don't always understand the way some of our younger friends communicate. Like this whole thing where instead of, if you have a problem with me, instead of communicating with me, you're gonna jump on Instagram and make a whole video, but you could have called me. You know what I'm saying? That's why I think everybody needs to read this book by Adrienne Marie Brown called "We Will Not Cancel Us," because she talks about how call out culture calling out should not be off the table, but it should be like a last resort. Why are you calling me out when you could have just called me? I don't get when people do that shit, KaNikki. You know what I'm saying? But that's part of the generation gap. We knew each other before social media, so we communicate in a different way. With some people, they feel like that's perfectly appropriate. They'll air you out, try to ruin your reputation with rumors. Then when they think better of it, they'll delete the video and think that did something. Where is all that activity? Where's the restitution for the harm you did to this person's reputation? Right. Of course, I'm still upset because you never explained. Of course, I'm still upset because you never apologized. And of course, I'm still confused because you never explained yourself. But there is a whole group of people who think that shit is okay. All right. But back to your question. The job of a host is to navigate all of this. You're part parent. Because once again, Spit That is family. As a host and founder, you are now a parent. I ain't got to tell you nothing about parenting, clearly. But just for those who might want to know, parenting becomes a different engagement when you're parenting adult kids.
Right.
Adult children who have their own ideas, who are coming to the table with their own ideas of what's right and wrong, and might have some resentment for you as an authority figure who's also an adult. All right? If you are a parent of more than one child, your children start beefing. If you take one side, now the other kid resents you. If you don't take sides, maybe now they both resent you because they view you as weak. All these are things for you to navigate. Pastor, you are the head of a church. Whether you ask for it or not, sign up for it or not, when you have created a spiritual experience that's meaningful to people who have moved on internationally or stayed in the area, as Spit That has been those things, you are now the pastor of a church. And when the beautiful thing about being a pastor of a church is you are bringing people to a spiritual experience. You are reminding them why what we do is even important on universal and personal levels, why it's cathartic, necessary, literally sound, and all those things. You are taking people closer to the Lord. Here's the downside. When there's a scandal in the church, the pastor is going to be wrapped up in the middle of it. Whether you think that's appropriate or not, whether you signed up or not. The pastor is here because guess what? If you knew about it, pastor, shame on you. If you didn't know about it, pastor, shame on you because you should have known. If there's a scandal in the church, KaNikki, what's it usually over?
Now listen. We talk about the Southern church because
however you want to do this,
because sometimes it's some intimacy stuff going on, but mostly it's money or the money or the fame. You know what I'm saying? Somebody not getting the recognition. They pastor, deacon so and so is not recognized or whatever. But it's money, it's relationship, and it's prestige, some type of prestige.
There we go. You hit on what I was looking for and more, because you came with the prestige piece. All right. You might have seen this viral video about the pastor who was cursing this congregation out because they wouldn't give him a Bovado watch or something like that. Ridiculous. But money and sex is what I was looking for. All right. Yeah. Now, poetry traditionally has not been known for making a lot of money. Shout out to people like Sekou Andrews who figured it out and who's master classed us right here on this platform about how to do that. But usually it's a sex scandal. How do you navigate these things when your parishioners, your constituents are having some type of issue with sexual assault allegations? What is your policy around that? I'm going to tell you what, you don't want to be figuring that out on the fly. You don't want to
No. Okay. But you know what? It's a trip now that we need to have. Like when we were doing poetry back then, of course we did poetry for the love. We did get the church aspect, right? So we're getting fed for something, right? When I went to spit that after I left, I always wanted to write when it was over, right? Sometimes I'm writing when I'm there, right? Because I'm inspired when I'm there.
Yes.
But we had rules, open mic rules, audience rules, but we didn't need like you now you got to write down, all of these. I don't even what's the word? Because now you got to be like, you got to be politically correct. You got to be, I don't know what is the word when you got to. Why can't I think of it?
Disclaimers and
disclaimers
writers and all the things. And my thing is, okay,
exactly.
all right, I'm trying to make sure that I'm saying what I wanted to say. Okay, so your policy around allegations between parishioners, right? The going concern these days, the party line, the politically correct way to move is hashtag I believe women. And I will be honest, that's basically what we've run with. I will also be honest and say I personally struggle with that because I've seen situations where women have publicly accused someone of something, privately admitted that they exaggerated, but then no restitution is done toward the person who they accused. Also, if you think women don't lie, I would love to spin you the yarn about the woman who lied about having my child with props, with like fake sonogram, fake baby bump, fake baby, all the above. It's real. Now, this is something I'm not supposed to say because I'm a cis heterosexual man. How dare you question these things? I wouldn't have to if someone else was, but I'm not hearing those conversations. And when shit got on fire with Spit That a couple of years ago, the way that I was encouraged not to take it personally was this is part of an ongoing national conversation around these type of issues where poets are getting called, where hosts are getting called out and this and that. But number one, if it's such an ongoing national conversation, why am I not hearing more about it? Why are we not having more healthy conversations about problems before they become emergencies? Number two, why are you being so selective about who you call out? But we're preaching about ethics though, because there's people protecting their friends, but shitting on others and making them scapegoats. So it's a lot going on, and I want people to remember that the way you move in the name of progressive movements, the way you move while you're trying to take down systemic oppression is a model for what you would replace it with. So you need to watch how you move in because you're showing us what you would replace these things with. It's like in the Hunger Games when the sister spent all that time trying to overthrow President Snow, and then they replaced President Snow with President Coin, and she realized President Coin just as shady as President Snow. So they used me as a pawn to get rid of this person because it's about the principle, and President Coin is just as ill. So the thing is, we need to be mindful of how we're moving, even in the name of fighting oppression, because you're modeling what you would replace this stuff with. Some people, I'm not so sure they want oppression to end. I think they want to change places with their oppressors. And so I will say this, though, as I criticize hashtag I believe women, something that I have enacted, I want to talk to the men, because that's something I learned from Charity's interview with Megan. Talk to your people. Megan, shout out to Megan Rickman, another one of my favorite people. Megan is white. She talked about how as a white person, she speaks to other white people about how to move as an ally of Black people. Okay, as a cis heterosexual male host of something that's special and as impactful, and when I say impactful, negatively and positively, because that's a great power and great positive responsibility. All right, churches have problems. They call Spit That church, churches have problems. They call Spit That family, families have problems. Homes have problems. So you have a great power and a great responsibility. I do. We'll talk to the men. Hosts, if you don't want to navigate the nuances and deal with the conflicts of how do I apply a fair, equitable, and sensible policy around sexual assault allegations, the best thing I could say is don't let it get that far. Because if you in patriarchy are not working to actively tear it down, then you are aiding and abetting, tacitly supporting, and benefiting from it. And if we are not actively creating anti-rape spaces, anti-sexual assault spaces, anti-misogyny spaces, we are aiding, abetting, tacitly supporting, and benefiting from. I'm saying these things because they're things that I failed to do. That's why I feel like I get to say that shit. It's time to stop solving problems only after they become emergencies. It's time to be proactive and not reactive. It's time to stop this cycle where nothing matters until someone complains. Then it matters too much because everybody's overcompensating, tripping over themselves to make up for the things that they've missed. I want to help break the cycle, and that's why I started with the piece I started with, because I want to be a voice for critical thinking. Critical thinking shouldn't replace caring. That's another thing people do. They turn everything into a binary. Oh, he's saying this. He's anti-cancel culture, so he's really anti-adult accountability. Or he's talking about critical thinking, but that's the new euphemism for everybody who wants to say, no, you have to be able to prove everything beyond the letter of the reasonable doubt and all that other stuff. No, two things can be true things at the same time. And I do expect poets to understand that, because we have the intelligence and nuance to do all these wonderful things with words. But when it's time to solve problems in real time, everybody plays dumb. And I realize we're still riding off the energy of 2020, which was a really loaded moment for so many reasons. We were scared. We didn't know what was coming next. We had COVID. We had virtual learning and work, people losing jobs, quarantine, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all these things.
Yes, yeah.
Weaponized all of that angst and used it as a way to try to curate who gets to come back to in-person spaces now that we are coming back. From the safety of behind their screen in quarantine, people tried to cancel others because they wanted to have control over who should be comfortable coming back into spaces. I don't think that's as ethical as folk are making themselves out. And I think it is very important that we move with the same progressive energy of the new worlds that we're claiming that we want to create. Because you can't live on 10 all the time. Nuck If You Buck is special because it's like a 3-minute and 30-second celebration of people acting temporarily like they don't know how to act. If you don't know how to act already, you don't get to celebrate when Nuck If You Buck comes on, because that's you on every day. So Nuck If You Buck is not for you. Nuck If You Buck is about you. Nuck If You Buck is celebrated by the people who know how to act, because ironically enough, it's a celebration of why it's important to know how to act. James Baldwin, I think, had the quote about how to be Black in America is to live in a constant state of rage. I think that was him. But James Baldwin was also one of the most brilliant and thoughtful writers we've ever had. And he was nuanced. And he did talk about how to find peace even with your enemies. That's the part people are missing. See what I'm saying? So I think it's a lot that we need to, if anything, damn, being the funniest poet, the most, I want to be a voice for that conversation. Where do we go? Okay, you're pissed off. Everybody gets it. Now what? You know what I'm saying? You're pissed off. Everybody gets it. Now what? You cannot live in that 2020 energy forever. At some point, cooler heads had to prevail. And the more I talk to people, I'm now finding that people are ready for these conversations about how we genuinely move as progressive, righteously radical people who aren't throwing out the baby with the bathwater and saying shit like, let's burn the whole system down and rebuild from the ashes. You can't rebuild shit from ashes.
You can't. Hey, that's a word. That's a word. Listen, I hope everybody that's watching this is gonna rewind and see this later, because that's what you call a whole word. So while we touched a little bit on, because basically this is we're talking about community, and there's definitely a big gap now. I think it seems like there were some younger poets when we were in our 20s, but I guess we weren't so in our 20s, we weren't so far, and even in our 30s, so far away from the 20s, right? So once you get to be 40s, and then you're 20 years older than the people attending events, it's a whole, because they could be your children for real, right? So that's a whole different word. And I know you started a venue on a Thursday night and dedicated every Thursday night to be there, kind of like the pastor does, right? Because sometimes we don't go to church, but the pastor's still there whether we at church or not, right? Yeah. Pastor gonna be there every Sunday, so you there every Thursday. And then at one point you said, let's bring in Dwayne, right? When was that? When did we bring Dwayne?
Yeah. So I think Dwayne tells the story better than me, but I'm gonna do my thing.
What year was that?
To me, Dwayne was always there. I met Dwayne before Spit That started. We were at this event at Howard, which at that point was my alma mater, and I was performing and he was performing, and I did this poem, The Surrogate Boyfriend, and he really related to that. He really connected to that and was like, wow, that was me too. I'm the surrogate boyfriend. I'm someone who a lot of women in my life don't look at as like a romantic prospect, but I'm the person who they talk to about their romantic prospects and other things like that. It's a complicated relationship. Later on, he saw me at Java Head, the original Java Head, where Com hosted, and remembered me. And I shouted him out in the audience. It was like, I did Surrogate Boyfriend. I said, I want to dedicate this to the cat right there, because he seemed to feel this last time I did it. He was like, oh shit, that's that cat. And Dwayne was my first regular. When we moved over from Java Head 1 to Java Head 2, he was my first regular. I might go back and forth between calling Dwayne he and they, also because Dwayne has recently like changed pronouns and straddled with he/they.
Hey,
So
yeah.
I try to practice the they just in case it goes full they one day.
Yeah.
But I'm saying he now because that's how they identified at the time. And I'm
Right.
picturing that young Dwayne from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That Dwayne was my first regular and was always there. And when Spit That had 2 people, and then the next week we had 4, and then 8, and then it just kind of exponentially grew. I know that's not exactly a model of literal exponential growth, but at one point we did have 100 people in that little coffee house. So
in that little bitty coffee house, right?
you did.
Yeah.
The thing is, Dwayne was just always there. So when you say the pastor is always there, sometimes the pastor couldn't be there because I was moving and shaking. Because I think, see how you mentioned when I was on 106 and Park, that might have been a Thursday. Every now and then, the more you're in the
it was a Thursday.
You start building your stuff and everything. You have more opportunities. Or sometimes, hell, I might want to go see a Jay-Z concert or something. And so Dwayne was someone who I saw was always there. I thought that they got my vibe, understood the energy of what it was I was trying to do with Spit That, so I could trust them with my child, so to speak. So I was like, yo, this is how we do it. I trust you to do this. I like your energy. I think you get me and what I'm doing with this. I think you would be a good person to host when I'm not here. So it started out with Dwayne was just like my sub when I couldn't be there. And then I don't remember exactly when, because we started Spit That in the middle of 2002. I feel like by 2003, because we were there at that venue until the end of 2004. But sometime in like 2003 or maybe 2004, I just made it official and was like, that's my co-host. You know what I mean? It just was an organic thing. I don't make a big deal out of it, like where I like knighted him or some shit. It's just, it was a natural progression of what was already happening with our friendship, with our artistic kinship, with their understanding of what Spit That was trying to be or was becoming organically or all the above. It just was an organic extension of what we were already doing, and there it was.
How was pivoting from an in-person space to virtually during COVID? How did that? I mean, everybody went virtual pretty much, but
first of all, shout out to you, because the difference with you is you saw a void, you saw a problem, and instead of just complaining about it, you solved it. Because you came up with, from an interview that I watched, I believe you said you first talked about it on a Tuesday, and by that following Sunday, Keep the Mic On was a reality. And you navigated the problems.
Made a post.
You know, with the Zoom and the this and the that, you navigated, but that's what pioneers do. They figure out the shit on the job. So when you say, how was it pivoting? It was rough for me, like it was rough for a lot of people. First of all, doing stuff on Instagram, and at first you only had an hour. So the way we would do Spit That on IG is what me or Dwayne, we would alternate hours on who was running it. So when this hour runs out, okay, now you take over. But what was good about it was meeting people from around the world. Like we would have artists from Lagos, artists from the UK, artists in Hawaii. I know that's still US, but I've never been there, so it seems far away to me. Artists all over the place. Sometimes where they were, it might be 3 a.m, but we were united in the kinship of creativity. And so also, Spit That former regulars who had moved away could now rejoin us.
That's cool.
Spit That has always had an interesting relationship with colleges because of where we were. First of all, I went to Howard, so I've always had a relationship with the school. Our first venue was very close to Catholic University and Trinity University, so we got a lot of college students that way. Java Head 2, my first venue was a spinoff from Java Head 1, Comms venue, shout out to Nat Cooper once again, and that was on a college campus, College Park. Then the next 3 venues we were at, shout out to Mocha Hut, Vernal Crooms, the Universal Capoeira Angola Center, my brother Dale, and the Emergence Community Arts Collective. Shout out to Sylvia Robinson, rest in peace and power. All those venues were walking distance from Howard University. So we had a lot of college students with that, all right? So sticking to your question when you said going virtual, because I wanted to talk about the physical venues, maybe we will, but fast forward into virtual, it's said that the intimacy is, some of the intimacy is lost, but at the same time, say for instance, there was this, we had this artist, this beautiful singer, who was a Howard student. She went to I want to say Vegas to go to med school. But when we went virtual, we were able to see her again because she would come on and she was one of our regulars once again, and she would come and sang for us. And this sister is fire.
Nice.
And so when you say the transition to the virtual, yeah, it was rocky, but at least we had that.
Yeah, because if that would have happened in 2002, we would have been in trouble.
Yeah,
that's it. Having that weekly connection and then nothing, right? So at least we did have something, you know.
For sure. And you know, sometimes I think we need to find some type of hybrid, because now one thing we're dealing with one of our venues that we deal with is they're a theater. You know, shout out to Woolly Mammoth Theater. We love that relationship. It's so awesome. But as a theater, they're part of a collective, and so they have to follow the collective's rules. And so we're transitioning with these different rules about how to perform without a mask on. And so it's different stipulations with vaccination and testing, and some people might not be comfortable with that.
What is the now? So Woolly Mammoth is also partnered with that as well. So now we are, you know, in person there, and then we're still doing our virtual as well. So now what we want to know is what day is that, and what's the COVID rule? I know everybody.
Okay, so this is temporary. I mean, I'm hoping by the time y'all watch this video, these things will have changed. But right now, as of August 2022, it's a situation where in order to perform unmasked, we need you to have taken a PCR test within 72 hours of the event. And you also need to be vaxxed and boosted. And we've lost some features like that because different people have different feelings around vaccination and boosting and all that jazz. Yeah. And also it just makes things a little more difficult. So thankfully though, Willie has been such a dope partner with even being willing and able to work with us as we face these changes. And it's a beautiful space because this is a place where, okay, see how Strange Loop is on Broadway now? Guess where it was right before it went to Broadway? Woolly Mammoth Theater. And this is an important relationship because see why you said, why is the performance part important? That union that we have with an actual theater, with that dramatic history, is a space where we can help explore the ways that poetry is made more powerful and more effective through performance. Why the stage is as important as the page, depending on the type of piece you're doing. And so we're excited to explore the possibilities of theater with Woolly Mammoth and with Spit That Academy, a program we're doing with Willie that started out with 5 poets with some connection to Ward 7 and 8 in DC, helping them find their voice, enhance their writing, and fine-tune their performance, graduating with a series of shows at the Arc Theater in Southeast. And we did that in the summer of 2021 when people were just coming back to in-person stuff, depending on the situation. And it was a big success, and it was spiritually important and all the things. And so as we navigate these challenges, we're really happy to have a partner like Woolly Mammoth Theater because they are amazing. Mm-hmm. And that's our new home.
It's a beautiful space. So that's on is it Monday? Is it Monday? When?
It's one Monday a month. It's usually third Monday, but sometimes we have to shift something either because of something going on at the theater or because the third Monday is a holiday. So sometimes it's like a different Monday, but usually it's third Mondays. I know that's not super consistent, but bear with us. All right, it's a really good show.
That's why you got to be liking and following and seeing what's going on, right? So and speaking of which, how do we do that? How do we follow you and find out what's going on with the venues as well?
Yeah, with Spit Dat, it's SPITDATDC. That's us on Instagram and I believe on Twitter. All right, we're more active lately on Instagram. With me, you see mine under here, but From Gumbo to Mumble. That's not just the name of our show, but I took ownership of that, yes, to promote the show, but also because that's my story. I did come from Gumbo to Mumble. I'm a New Orleans guy who came to DC. So From Gumbo to Mumble, that's me on Instagram. Spoof School also because that's where I promote my teaching artistry work. I try to keep the ratchetry and just the rawness and the bluntness and the cussing and fussing. That's From Gumbo to Mumble. But when it's time to transition into Drew the teaching artist and brand in a different way, that's Spoof School. So From Gumbo to Mumble, Spoof School, Spit That DC, those are 3 Instagram handles you could go with. BrokeBaller.com, I will get around to doing more things with than I've been doing lately. I also, while I'm thinking about things I do, I host at Busboys and Poets, 14th and B Street. I am the current venue captain, proud to say, and I currently host there on third Tuesdays. And I really love that relationship too, because see how I said earlier that what Jeff said about hosting with painting the energy field and keeping the chakras aligned. I feel that way. I feel renewed in my hosting with people who aren't necessarily my regulars, but people who might be in town because they were in town for a conference. Howard students and other college students, people passing through the city or the country just because, and they've heard about busboys. I get to have that brand newness again and remember why I'm a good host all by myself. You know what I mean? And I do feel reinvigorated whenever I host at Busboys. So I appreciate that relationship. And it's also a different type of bonus. When we were at the Religious Community Arts Collective, see how I said the host job also can be chief of security? Let me tell you, after Sylvia passed away, rest in peace, in 2017, there was a lot of uncertainty around ownership and access to the venue, the Emergence Community Arts Collective. Thankfully, it just got acknowledged as a historic landmark, so they can't just turn it into freaking a Starbucks or something. But, you know, after she passed, not having left a will, there was a lot of contention around who should navigate the space. And there was a homeless guy who started marauding around, threatening us and things like that. And it just became this whole thing. So chief of staff, when you say who holds it down for Spit That, I want to shout out people like Karoji and Tu, all right, who had our back. But, you know, chief of staff, you're the last event that leaves the building. Sometimes y'all don't leave till 11 or midnight. Locking up the space, clearing out the space, cleaning up the space. All that's part and parcel of the host job, depending on the situation. When I host at Busboys, I'm never the last one to leave. It's a restaurant. They counting cash, they cleaning up. I could host, do my thing, clock in, clock out. All right, see y'all next time.
Yes, and then it wasn't like that back in the day. Youngsters, you know, we had to do everything, the setup, the breakdown. You got to be there until you got to wait until everybody leaves. Trying not to rush everybody out. You know, everybody else at home sleep except the people that still got you there, and you're still there. Like, okay, it's midnight now. Can I go home?
First one in, last one out. That's the job.
Yeah, sometimes you didn't get paid. So definitely shout out to Andy Shalal for giving us a stipend and some food because you didn't get. A lot of times you didn't get paid. You know, we talk about doing it for the love. When you put on events, a lot of times you didn't get paid. You had to pay your artists. You know, you had to pay the venue.
About Busboys, I want to say this. This is what I respect about Busboys. When they came into town, they could have picked anybody to host their events. They could have picked comedians. They could have picked people who were just good at hosting. But they knew the value of tapping into the existing poetry scene, and they chose hosts who were already invested in the creative community. People like me, people like you, Dwayne, you know, all these folks, 13. And so I respect that the fact that they knew, look, somebody's going to call us usurpers, you know what I mean, and all this stuff. But we want to make sure that we do the due diligence of showing the care that we actually have for this, yes, business, but also this tribe and the artistic community, the pre-existing artistic community that we are moving into. We want to respect it, we want to honor it, and we want to have people involved who are already invested in it.
They're already there, yeah.
That's why I continue to work with Busboys, because they saw the importance of that.
So check this out. I'm gonna ask you 2 questions, and then I'm gonna have you do 1 piece, and then I'll have my co-hostess come back. Okay. So 2 questions. Question number 1. So my mama is the person. She's my person. She's the person who I call first when something happens to tell this is what happened. So my mama is my number 1 person who I call first. Who are your people? This is the opportunity for you to shout them out. Who do you call?
Wow. I must say Dwayne. That's one for sure. My counselor, my consigliere, somebody who's seen me through my worst and at my best and can give me advice without judgment. I'm going to say somebody who I think y'all should interview, Dana Lane Crawford.
Who is it?
Dr. Dana Lane Crawford. She used to go by Dr. Free Spirit. She's a poet from Dr.
I know
Free.
who that is.
It helps to have a best good friend who is also a psychologist, because she has been my rock in more ways than one. You know, my friend my person. There's somebody out there who, for different reasons, I'm not going to say their name right now, but there's somebody who has walked with me and been my home. See how I'm a host to a lot of people? There's someone out there who's been my host. And I can't, as good as I am with words, I don't dare try to define in words what that relationship is. And so that person, that's, you see how you say who you call? I don't have to call with this person. It's like a link, a telepathic link, like two hearts in line type situation. So that, I wanted to save them for last, even without saying their name.
Without saying their name. So yes. And I will say, if you have any questions for Drew, this is the perfect opportunity for you to type them in the chat, right? So we can get to them on YouTube and in Facebook. If you have any questions, we'll monitor those and answer those. So here's my next question.
Shout out to the time out to my sister.
To your sister. Well, you already shouted your sister. We already know you shouted your sister in the beginning.
That's a life bond. Like, that's my twin, my Irish twin. We the same age for like half a year. Like 11 months, really. That's my man.
Well,
I'm gonna just say that. Shout out to my sister.
Definitely a truth. Your sister is a truth.
One is still here. One is still here in the physical realm, but the other passed on. Rest in peace, power to my sister Lauren. Yes. But yeah, I'm gonna say those.
Yes. Okay, you asked yourself your own question. That's what I'm saying. In the beginning, we talked about the difference between a scene and a community. So tell us, right? We created because we are a community because we had a poetry scene. We got a poetry scene now. Do we have poetry community too? Yeah.
Well,
you tell us the difference.
Let's define some terms because we throw around all these terms, but we don't all know that we're saying the same thing. And this goes back to your poem when you said relationships cease to exist because we never had a conversation about what a relationship even is. We throw around these terms: community, accountability, safe space. What does it all mean? We might be saying different things. I have come to use scene as simply a set with actors playing their roles. That's a scene. I no longer assume that we are all in community just because we all like poetry or just because we all show up in the same space at the same time. I went from K through 8 just being a goofy dude in places where it was safe to be a goofy dude. Then high school, I discovered a different side of New Orleans and I didn't fit in. I went to an all-boy, all-black Catholic high school and it was socially miserable for me. I did not understand. These cats just hated me and it was miserable. So then when I got to Howard, I was so happy to find artists, fellow outcasts, misfits, weirdos. And I just latched onto that so much. Then when I left school and all of a sudden had my own place and a job and resources, I used those resources to try to inculcate what I thought that community was. So that's why I had all those crazy parties back in the day. You know, the blue party, the red party, the chocolate decadence party, spending thousands of dollars on food and liquor for people to be on.
I forgot what the good times. The good times is playing in the background as a backdrop right now. You know, man.
And the reason I did that was I wanted to believe in creative community. I was like, I don't want us to just be a bunch of people who know each other's poetry. Because if we're saying that poetry is important and vulnerable and all these things, then knowing each other's poetry should be special and we should know each other outside of the poetry too. So that's why I was like, yo, these are my people. And I just took everybody in because we all like poetry. So I assumed we were all on the same page. This becomes dangerous when you find out that the same people who in some cases was eating and drinking in your crib will come to your venue and do poems dissing you. So I had to learn the hard way that just because we all like poetry and we all show up at the same spaces and see each other all the time doesn't mean we're all in community. We must define what community is for ourselves. So my now working definition of community is a group of people who are continuously committed to helping each other become the best version of themselves individually and collectively while navigating the balance of empowering each other without enabling each other, and challenging and pushing each other without undermining and destroying each other. And yes, I do think it's necessary to be that specific. I do think it's necessary to be that specific, because when you aren't, that's when you're setting yourself up for all these, oh, we have an unwritten social contract. We have an unspoken social contract. Is a thin line between that and a whole bunch of assumptions that you are projecting upon other people that you have the nerve to be furious with them for not living up to, even though you never communicated these expectations.
Yeah. Yeah.
It goes back to what we were talking to Jeff, and y'all were talking about the difference between communication and expectation in relationships.
Yes, that's gonna be part of my. Thank you for reminding me. I got a workshop coming up on 24th. That's gonna be part of. Yes, I'm gonna have to write about that.
Word.
Communication and expectation. Let me make a note. I lied. Let me ask you one more question.
Mm-hmm.
We gotta find out about push the button, right? So listen, when I was young, there was a cheer that I used to do, and I'll be doing it with my daughter now, right? I'll be like, soda pop, psh, push the button. Push the button. This is what cheer I used to do, right? So when I saw that, I was like, what's push the button? Is it a cheer? Is it the cheer? What's push the button? We gotta know.
I'm gonna tell you all about push the button, and I also want to say, Mr. Carroll in the comments asked about my experiences with the fifth L, and I'm happy to talk about that too. So I just want to shout that out so we don't forget. But
yeah, okay, listen, we're gonna get all those questions. So you answer that question, do a piece, and we're gonna get all the questions in our comments.
All right, cool. Here we go. Push the Button is a hip-hop musical and social satire play written by me and Dwayne Lawson Brown. And it visits this town where there's this villain who gets on everybody's nerves, has done all these prankish things. He's not like a super bad person, but he's just annoying. He does all these things. If something bad happened in town, the villain was probably behind it. So in comes this hero, superpowered dude, who introduces this thing called the button. Because the problem is they would lock villain up, but he would always escape or get out on some technicality. So hero comes to town, seduces everyone with his charisma, his power, and his button. And he says, this is a key to law enforcement. If anybody presses this button, that's it. You're going to jail for life. No questions asked, that's it. So the play becomes about finding out if this is an appropriate form of punishment, if the villain even did it, and all these things. And it addresses things like cancel culture. And this is what I love about a play. You can talk about things didactically. Everything doesn't have to be so obvious and spoon-fed. You can use a story. Because with poetry, I love poetry, but at some point you really are just talking to the people. And sometimes that's best received by other poets, but that's not necessarily who you want your audience to be. You want your words to reach everybody. Right, but what about people who are nonverbal? Here's the trick. With a play, now you're in it. I am infusing you into this world. This is an experience that you are now a part of, so you can't deny it the same way people can deny words when they want to. People do all types of diabolical little stuff with words. They can tune out. They can cherry pick and just focus on the things that they want to focus on. They can take you too literally. They can take you out of context. There's so many things people can do with your words, but with a play, it's different because I'm bringing you into a world. Are you going to now cherry pick my world? Are you going to now tune out my world? Take my world too literally? You're immersed in it. It's not so easy. All right? So you can be didactic. Now, so Push the Button is a hip-hop musical making fun of the way that we navigate problems in this new normal. The way that all the things I talked about in misinformation age, for everybody who wouldn't get it as a poem, now you will get it because you'll get it as a play. And it's short, and it's funny, and it's hip-hop. So you're going to recognize the songs because the songs in it are spoofs. The songs are spoofs of songs you'll recognize. So you're going to be involved and engaged in that way because now we got music going on. But the trick is the spoofs are storytelling because they all move the story alone. They talk about the characters, their motivation, and the story. So that's my new flex, so to speak. Everybody's got bars. So what you can write, so what you can rap. Can you tell a story while you're doing it? All right.
Right. I look forward to that. So that's coming in 2023. So y'all heard it here first. Y'all heard it here first. So I'm going to in theater. So I'm gonna leave the screen, let you do your thing, and then we're gonna bring people back and we're gonna find out what questions we got in our comment section.
All right, bet. So since we're talking about Push the Button, I want to share with y'all one of the crowd favorites from Push the Button so that y'all are prepared and y'all can get involved Just like when you go see Hamilton, you know your favorite song and when it's coming and you can sing along and all that jazz. That's how I want you to be when Push the Button comes out. I want you to already have your favorite song because you came again and you brought your friends. So I'm going to do a song from Push the Button. Even though it's a spoof, I'm not going to do it with the instrumental because I don't want us to get flagged for copyright or anything like that. But I'm going to do it a cappella, but I think you'll recognize the song that I'm spoofing here. This song is called Lock 'Em Up. And it is the people of the town celebrating the fact that that villain is about to possibly get locked up. Now, disclaimer, this is not how I feel about the prison industrial complex. This is me making fun of the lessons that this town is about to learn about their ideas about crime and punishment. So please, I don't want anybody to take this literally and say that I'm celebrating imprisonment. I told y'all earlier in the interview that me and Dwayne do workshops in prisons, and I have a lot of issues with the prison industrial complex. But this is within the world of Push the Button, and it is called Lock 'Em Up. Once upon a time, there was a villain who would trouble me. Then he pushed a button and my hero locked him up for me. Wrist bound, handcuffs, no more of your Bama stuff. Hero is a champion. Villain strike pajamaed up. Hit him with that jail time. Make a villain act right. This villain don't deserve mercy. I know that's right. Good luck busting out the pen this time, fam. Hero holler, zero tolerance, so you're stuck. Good luck busting out the pen this time, fam. Do the crime, do the time. Now you're locked up. Lock 'em up, lock 'em up, lock 'em up, lock 'em up. Lock 'em up, 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 lock 'em up. Lock him up with 40 locks. That way you'll make sure he's not escaping. No probation, get parole. No, you surely not. Sell him up the river, celebrate he in the cell block. Selfie on my cellular, smiling outside my cell. He was always popping slick, but hero put a stop to it. Lock him up and drop the key into a bottomless pit. Villains out here playing, gotta make them understand. If you push a button, man, then it's cuffs on your hands. Wrist-bound handcuffs, no more of your Bama stuff. Hero is a champion. Villain strike pajamaed up. Hit him with that jail time. Make a villain act right. This villain don't deserve mercy. I know that's right. Good luck busting out the pen this time, fam. Hero holler, zero tolerance, so you're stuck. Good luck busting out the pen this time, fam. Do the crime, do the time. Now you're locked up. Lock 'em up, 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 lock 'em up. Villains ain't messing with me now, and I can see why. He ain't getting out of prison till the day he die. Villains want to smoke, hero brought it to your doorstep. Anybody else want to push the button, you're next. Put him in a cell, he will never be the same. Used to steal jewelry, now all he webby chains. Villains out here playing, gotta make him understand. If you push the button, man, if he had a twin, hero lock him up again. Wrist-bound handcuffs, no more of your Bama stuff. Hero is a champion. Villain strike pajamaed up. Hit him with that jail time. Make a villain act right. This villain don't deserve mercy. I know that's right. Good luck busting out the pen this time, fam. Hero hollered, zero tolerance, so you're stuck. Good luck busting out the pen this time, fam. Do the crime, do the time. Now you're locked up. Lock 'em up. Lock 'em up, 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 lock 'em up. Stinky smelly much.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
I know we're going to get into these comments and questions in the group chat, but something Drew said early in the interview kind of hit home, and I just wanted to say this. I often tell the story of the second open mic I ever performed at was with Dr. Dupas in Baltimore at Verbatim Mondays. The third open mic I performed at was Spit That in DC. And after I took my hiatus, my unexpected 3-year hiatus, one of the first open mics I came back to was Spit That. And the first thing Drew said to me when he announced me, he's like, "Welcome home." And I just want to tell you that that's been 8 and 12 years ago. And it's still,
Wow.
It still gives me chills. And I just wanted to give that 100% love back to this amazing artist. So let's go ahead and jump in with what's going on in the chat.
Yes, people had things. So, I mean, I guess we should start with that one question that Maurice was asking about the experiences with Fifth L. So.
Right on, yeah. So the Fifth L, for those who may not know, is a group that now consists of Native Son, also known as David Ross, and Femi Lawal, aka the Dry Fish. And peace and shout out to both of them, amazing artists and super dope people. The original configuration of the Fifth L was Sir Reigns, who was fire, Native Son was spirit, Femi the Dry Fish was wind, Calm, aforementioned complex, was earth, and I, Drew Addison, Droopy the Broke Baller, was water. I was the last one to join the group, and I was the only one who was based in DC and not Baltimore, because the rest of those cats were in Baltimore. And I think Sir like vouched for me, or maybe it was like a consensus, but they were like, yo, we gotta get Droopy. And he saved my element from me, because I'm a Pisces and I'm from a city that's below sea level. So the water, you know, I was honored that they saved water for me. And so this was like 2002. This was 2002, and we were a 5-member group, the Fifth L, and we had really great experiences together, and we teased what we thought spoken word and hip hop could be. Because remember, this is right around when Def Poetry Jam was coming out, and everybody was like, okay, what's going to happen next with this thing? We were trying to figure out how to make an industry out of this thing. And on the wave of that excitement came the original Fifth L. Now, we had, you know, some issues among the group and things of that nature. And I take a lot of responsibility for that, because I was really young and immature and insecure. And so we just started bumping heads, partly because the first one to leave the group was Calm. And so we went from 5 to 4. And the way that it split was kind of along this axis, because at the same time, Sir moved from Baltimore to DC, up the street from me. He had started a relationship with his now wife, who lived in DC, and started working at Java Head, our first venue for Spit That. And so with David and Native in Baltimore and me and Sir in DC, that could have been a real opportunity for bridging the two cities. But also by me and Sir being like inseparable and Native and Femi being inseparable, it almost kind of became two groups in one group. And there was a lot of like misunderstanding and miscommunication going on. And I personally handled it probably worse than anybody. And to include setting my Fifth L t-shirt on fire at Java Head as my way of saying that I was leaving the group. So that's why when young people now, when I talk about generation gap and I see cats in their 20s who do wild shit in the context of Spit That, I try to show grace, because I was given grace to do dumb shit when I was in my 20s. Fast forward to now, you know, the Fifth L is cool. Like, to my knowledge, everybody, all the different members of the group moved on and done different things, and also in their own ways are coming back to art, those who did leave it. And so I'm in a happy place now of knowing that I was a part of that legacy, and knowing that I get to now be a fan and peer of people who I have so much respect for. Because when you say, well, y'all will get to that question later, but when y'all talk about who, I'll wait for that. But yeah, shout out to the Fifth L, because they're amazing brothers, and I'm proud to have walked with them, and I'm enjoying continuing to see their walk fly. Yeah.
Okay, so Analysis should be backstage so he could ask this himself, but here we go. You shouted out Sylvia Robinson, even as I was thinking about asking you to talk about her and her importance to Spit That. Perhaps elaborate on that. That was part one.
Absolutely. So out of the like half dozen physical venues that Spit That has been at in 20 years, ECAC is where we were the longest. We were there from 2009 to 2019. And that's the place that a lot of people visualize when they think of Spit That. Their Spit That relationship and connection was through that space. And it has a lot to do with the open-heartedness and open-mindedness of one Sylvia Robinson, who was the owner and founder. And she literally opened a home for us. We were at the Mocha Hut from 2005 to 2008. All right, so we were at Java Head from 2002 to 2004. Java Head closed at the end of 2004. We had like a 6-month hiatus. Mocha Hut opened on U Street. Shout out to Vernal Crooms. He gave us a shot. We were there from 2005 to 2008. They closed because it just cost too much to run an independent coffee house on that block, on U Street. We know about gentrification and everything. And we knew that they were closing, but it happened sooner than we thought. Because I showed up one Thursday and legit, there was newspaper on the doors. You know what I mean? Like, we thought we had a couple more weeks or something, but we showed up and it was over. So thankfully, Dale, my fellow New Orleanian, who's a Caparisto, was in the same block, and he had this capoeira center that he also lived at, his capoeira studio. He opened his space up to us. We were there for a while, but then, once again, gentrification. What happened with Spit That is, Spit That creates this communal energy that people don't want to be over at 11 o'clock or wherever the show is over. So it becomes these offshoots, these subcultures, these ecosystems underneath the ecosystem, these relationships within the relationship of Spit That and tangential to it. What that looks like sometimes is people hanging out outside till 3 a.m, sharing poetry and telling each other their life stories. And so the people who lived on that block weren't thrilled about that, so they started involving the Advisory Neighborhood Commission and started complaining. And we didn't want Dale to lose his home and capoeira studio because he was helping us. So that's when we connected with Sylvia. And what a space, what a home, what a church for real. Because not only did Spit That happen there, but capoeira also happened there, and all these other events. Whenever somebody wanted to do an event, some type of workshop, that was a sorority that I think had their Hell Night there while we were doing Spit That. But so
I'll interject. The first Pajama Jammy Jam Slam was held at the Merchant Center.
Sylvia was a true connector and a true understander of community.
I did not know.
Hence, community is in the middle name.
Mm-hmm.
Emergence Community Arts Collective. Very few people understood community the way that she did. She gave us a chance. She accepted the generational differences because, you know, some folks were outside on the porch smoking and drinking and doing this and that, and we had to deal with that. And that's another thing. When you talk about the host job, understand that your umbrella is going to cover more than you think, because some of these relationships and subcultures and tangential experiences and relationships that are happening under the auspices of your event while you're inside trying to run your little event, you might still later be held responsible for some of this stuff that's happening outside, but connected to, all right? Be careful of parasites as well. But when you say talk about Sylvia, what can I say that hasn't already been said, that hasn't already been lived? I am eternally grateful for the relationship that we had, for the home that she gave, for the inspiration and understanding of community that she fostered. And I hope that that's not something that passed on with her. And I hope that this, the fact that the ECAC has now been named a historic site will be a pathway into a new understanding of community, whatever that looks like.
His next, okay, so analysis continues. Also, props, Drew, to the way you've come prepared for this Kitmo interview. It's obvious not only you're familiar with how poets and platforms rolls, but you knew you had some important points you wanted to make to get out about the matters discussed in the format. That's love for the Kitmo format. One of my favorite pieces of yours is a spoof piece, I Be's Fat. Mm-hmm. I love that you're calling attention to nutrition. Do you get positive responses to it? Have you gotten any feedback thinking that you're fat shaming? And if so, how do you respond?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So it's called I Be's Getting Fat. It is a spoof of I Be's in a Trap by Nicki Minaj featuring 2 Chainz. I wrote it like 10 years ago. I believe I did make the video in like 2012 when Nicki Minaj first came out with Pink Friday, I believe her first album was called. So I've learned a lot about things like fat shaming. All right. So that's why now when I do that song, I changed it to I Be's in the Snacks. And yeah, I've definitely gotten some pushback about that, about how not even just the fat piece, but also I had some slides up. I don't think I did I Be's Getting Fat or I Be's in the Snacks in this particular school, but I had some slides showing the students what parody is. And I had one of McDonald's and it said, Mick diabetes, I'm hating it. And one of the things that the school said was, you know, some of our students eat it like that because that's all their families can afford. And so I've had to be careful. Once again, this is the job, learning the job as you go. And this is why I'm anti-cancel culture. We have to have the space and grace to make mistakes and learn from them, because that's part of being human. You can't just be like, oh, you made a mistake, so you're canceled. You know what I mean? That's not human. And that's why the price of being wrong has become so high that no one wants to pay it. So that's why people either lay down or they double down. Laying down is catering and kowtowing because you're afraid of consequences. So you say, okay, whatever you say, so I don't get in trouble. But what if the reason you're getting in trouble or the way or extent to which you're getting in trouble is wrong? You know what I mean? These are questions we should be able to ask and conversations we should be able to have. The current climate is one where I don't think that's possible. But you either lay down like that or you double down and say, no, I said this and I said what I said. Well, that's not graceful either. And so I had to learn what fat shaming was and how that worked. And also, I've gotten away with things over the years because of my sense of humor. And comedy, I've learned more about. And I like, for instance, with everything with Dave Chappelle, I find that a lot of comics, one, people love freedom of speech until it's time to deal with the consequences of their speech. Winston Churchill, I think, said most people's idea of freedom of speech is I can say whatever I want, but you better not have nothing to say about it. Two, second hypocrisy I find with a lot of comics is they'll say comedy is the holy grail. Oh, put comedy on a pedestal. It's the most important art form. It's the only art form where you can bring everything that you have to your job. And while everybody else in the world argues viciously about things, comics are the ones who get to have a beer and talk about it. All that sounds beautiful. Some of that is Robin Williams. Some of that is Dave Chappelle. But guess what? When they get in trouble for their jokes, comics say, what's the big deal? It's just jokes. And a minute ago, you said it was this glorious, genre, the most important genre, this valuable thing. You kind of can't have both. All right. So I've had to learn that about comedy. You can't get away with everything just because it's a joke. Because in jokes, people will often say the things that they were afraid to say straight up. So that's the second thing. I got more I could say about Dave Chappelle, but I don't want to go on a whole tangent. I will say that in studying different things that have happened about comedy, it's caused me to reapproach my approach with comedy and understand, hey, you're joking about something that's somebody else's lived experience. So you might want to be sensitive about how you do that. And people love Uppy's getting fat. That's a lot of people's favorite spoof of mine. But I have had to learn some things about how you get your message across with grace and with sensitivity while still being funny and irreverent. I like humor and irreverence. My sense of humor has saved my life. I couldn't have made it through the things I made it through if I didn't have a sense of humor. That doesn't mean that everything is carte blanche, open season. You can do whatever you want as long as somebody thinks it's funny. So it becomes about nuance because it becomes about being meaningful, having content, having comedy, but also having grace.
Ooh. I've got my brain just glitched. That was a human brain glitch, y'all. That's what y'all just saw. Because I think Drew's got to come back because there's more conversation here that we have not even. I think we've barely scratched the surface, and we've been at this a little over 2 hours.
Wait a minute. Can we talk about this? Mm-hmm. This conversation is why we be on the porch at 3 a.m. and spit that.
Exactly. And understand. You, Drew, as I said at the beginning of my comments, know this from the bottom of my heart, from the corner of my soul. You are definitely loved. You are definitely like family to me, and that's why when I said in the pre-show, I was like, "Yeah, I'm so happy to see you." And I'm going, I know I've seen him recently. I don't care. I could have seen him 5 minutes before this interview started, and I would still be very happy to see him.
Almost it doesn't matter. You're exactly right. It doesn't matter.
All right, go ahead, Danielle, and give Drew the last question.
Okay, look, man, this is the hardest question you're going to answer all night because I wouldn't be me if I didn't ask the hardest question you answer all night.
He did answer a little bit of it. He did answer a little bit.
You did.
That never happened.
It really doesn't.
I'm still going to throw it out there as the official question.
But you know what? Before I do that, let me give a shout out of a text message shout out from Raquel Rob Brown, who said, "Please tell him that she sends her love to you, and she heard what you said doing the thing, and she gonna move on, do whatever she was doing her thing. She didn't have time to come in, so she sent me a text." So
wait a second. And you know what? I knew there was a thought I was having as this was going on. If you wanted to hear this podcast, this show today could have been called A History of the DMV Poetry Scene. When I tell you this man was dropping names and I was like, yes, where is he? Complex, hey, what's good? And he's just dropping names, and I'm going, yes, history, DMV history. So last week we bullied our feature into writing a book. This week is your turn. There's your publisher. There's your publisher. There's your editor over there, down there.
Publisher, editor.
Because there's so much.
But the DC.
So much I didn't
This would be the first time I published a book and bought the book.
Same. I'm editing, and I'm like, wait,
look.
Take my money.
See how you say scratch the surface? I didn't talk about the fact that before Java Head was Java Head, it was Brooklyn Cup of Dreams, and that's a whole other generation.
Yes.
I didn't talk about Urban Energy. I didn't talk about Fish Tea Cafe. Rest in peace to One Wise African. Woo. I didn't talk about Teaism or the Myth Slam. I didn't talk about Kaffa House and the fact that the first venue I went to on U Street that scared the shit out of me and made me not go back for a while was at Kaffa House, and guess who the host was? Face, who came up and said, "First of all, nigga, if you want to come up here with all that hip-hop, hippity-hop shit like you the baddest MC in the world, I will gong your shit, nigga." That's the first post I saw on U Street. I still
we need this memoir, Drew. We need this memoir.
Oh my God, I forgot about Face.
Yeah.
Listen, Face. Shout out to Face, who I was gonna say who I saw on the street in DC one time and was like, "Hey, can you buy this or whatever?" I was like, "Face, I don't have no money." He was like, "It's because I'm black, ain't it?"
Oh my God. My first open mic, my very first one was Myth. When it was in Georgetown though.
Myth was by actually very close to Woolly Mammoth Theater. The Myth was at Teaism, the Teaism over there on, I want to say...
C Street.
Yeah, D Street. D7, 6.
Yeah, it was like C and 7 or something like that. I was there when it was still over in Georgetown on M Street.
And by the way, people give Spit that props for inventing only $5. We got that from Myth, I believe. I believe we got that from Myth. So I just wanted to clarify that. Just like,
oh my God, yeah, this is definitely a kid. Oh my God, we need this book. I'm just gonna put it out
we need Drew back, and we need this book. Go ahead, Danielle.
We need this book. Actually, better than that. Not only do we need this book, I'm throwing this out there. Just saying. I'm just gonna throw this out there before I ask this question, right? So there are a group of poets who did a movie that got submitted to a bunch of film festivals about the history of a particular, I think it was Apache in Atlanta. It's called Third and Spring. Like, we need that kind of treatment for like the history of this place right here. The history of like the entire like DMV poetry scene. We need that. We need to do the book, and then let's take the book and turn it into a film. We need that.
Yeah,
I'm here for it.
Words, who that? Yes.
I've now thrown all the things out in the universe. Yes. Let's see this happen. So last question, like I said, hardest question that, and you partially answered it. And you're gonna say, I have a feeling you're gonna say somebody that I'm thinking. You're gonna answer with somebody I'm thinking of, and I'm gonna throw another like, hey, you need to be on the show too. So now that you've been on the show, and you've done this segment, so you know poets and platforms.
And he's watched them all.
And
not all.
And then you already know the end of the question, which is, now that you've been on the show, who do you think would make a good guest? Whose brain should we pick on this show?
Okay. So when I first would watch this, and I knew this question was coming, I thought I was going to stump y'all because I was going to say Keith Rogers. Then I looked and saw y'all already interviewed Keith Rogers. But I want to shout out Keith because that is a true understander of what creative community is. Black on Black Rhyme, and just him as a person, much love. I want to say, once again, I'm throwing some out, and I might find that you already interviewed them, even with my research. I want to say Ainsley Burroughs.
He is on my list. I'm gonna try. He's on the list. So we just have to do the reach out.
Yeah. Let me see.
And for the record, I believe he's back in Baltimore now.
So first of all, this is Ainsley's book. This is like the second copy of it. This is his anthology of poetry. All right.
Wow.
Yeah, the Spellcaster's Manual. Okay. But it's not just the poetry. I respect Ainsley because he figured out how to take poetry beyond where it traditionally was with things like Sweet Spot. He went to school for business, and he has a strong business and tactical mind. And he understood that not everybody like gets poetry, but everybody likes sex. And so he figured out how to combine this erotic poetry with other erotic experiences and bring it into something that could go global. And he became like a pop poetry event. And when people hear pop poetry, like Face used to use that as a negative term, just like entertaining has been a negative term in poetry. But shout out to me, I got the first most entertaining poet award in the D&B Renaissance Awards. All right, along with all these lovely noospas here, you dig, and these ain't even all of them. But history here. But in any case, I say Ainsley Burroughs. I want to say Danny Lane Crawford, Free Spirit, because she could talk to y'all about how poetry because she's a psychologist, so she could talk about how she went from poet to psychologist, and also how she was a freestyle poet. She went from a written poet to somebody who would freestyle the poetry. What that thought process looks like. Plus, she's just a super interesting, like Wonder Woman, multifaceted human, interesting person to talk to. I want to say, y'all probably have already interviewed Dr. Rebecca Dupaz, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I got
a year ago. It was a year ago. Because it came up in my memories today.
Yeah, just a brilliant human, super dope person. So many different ways that she's taken poetry beyond where it traditionally was, and fellow educator, and understander of the importance of art and education. It's gonna be people I miss. I want to say Terica June, because while she's primarily known as a hip hop artist, she comes from the same Born None in that whole era, the same poetic convergence that we come from. Wet Metaphor and Kim, who founded Urban Energy, just to talk about what it was like to start a Black-owned venue on U Street in the midst of everything that was going on and what happened with that. Urban Energy brought a lot of people together. Urban Energy was basically like Spit That, but different. And they had Reiki therapy and all that. I learned what Reiki was in that building. And we used to spend the show was on Saturday nights, and we would spend the night there, sleep on the floor, and go have brunch the next morning before brunch in DC was a thing. Hashtag brunch bitches and all that. We were organically doing that stuff. So I want to talk to the people who are part of this history. Kuroji N2. When we say don't let it happen to poetry, from my knowledge, that started with a poem of his. And Kuroji is a writer, arts integration specialist, and someone who could talk about the educational side and just his interest and path into the artistic scene. But I'm going to end with somebody who I wish we could interview, and that is Lorna Pinckney.
Yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah.
Just who she was and the institution that
you on mute. I see it.
I got the same thing. I'm looking at it. I've always kept it.
I keep it right behind me on all the things that I've hosted over the pandemic, because she was the first one who talked to me about that question about the host and the energy. That question came from her about the host being in control of energy, right? The conversation came from her. That question came from her. So yes, definitely.
I have her picture. She's downstairs in my art room on my artist wall. I have a picture of her from, oh God, what is it? Bohemian Caverns. She featured at Bohemian. She was at Bohemian one night, and I have this really nice picture of her downstairs.
Also, first of all, let's start talking to some of these owners of some of these classic venues. You know, let's talk to Andy about how he started Busboys. Let's talk to the people who first hosted that and or first owned venues like Bar None, Main Goals, all the places that we shout out, Bohemian Caverns. Let's talk about those stories, because just like the historic preservation site, they actually won that for ECAC. There was a fight to keep Bohemian Caverns a historic site, and that fight was lost. And I remember I went to City Hall and tried to talk to City Council about preserving, but we lost that fight. And so I want to talk to the players. I don't know all the names, but I want to talk to the people who were involved in this history who built these venues, even if they weren't poets, the people who made the spaces where we met each other. That's an important part of the history. Because if we just talk, you know what I mean? We got to talk to the venue owners because that's how you find out how we do it for ourselves.
And you would think with Three Busboys hosts on this chat, in this conversation that, I mean, granted, Andy has been on the list. The question has always been, how do we make it happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that would be an instant roundtable the day it happens, but we need to make it happen.
Yeah. I would modify my whole segment for that.
All right,
Likewise.
everyone. Oof. I think we need to have another conversation with Drew, and I think we will.
I think so.
I have ideas. So first thing I want to do, if you are in the room, of course, the three of us, if we could please give a huge round of applause for our special guest.
Literal round of applause.
Anderson.
The literal round of applause.
Worth the wait. Worth the wait.
And then, listen, again, Drew came on here and volunteered his time. So scroll him on the bottom. You got his Cash App. You got his PayPal right on the bottom of the screen. We want him to continue to do great things in the community. Those great things are not free. So if you want to drop some coin, if you're watching this on the replay or not, you can still drop coins anytime. You don't have to be live. Just drop the coins.
That's right. Follow his website is above. You can find his social media, and he discussed his social media. Save this. Share this chat with your friends. Share this with your friends. Tell them to put it on in the background while they're sorting their laundry. Whatever.
Absolutely.
But have them come and listen. We are off next week. It is Labor Day weekend, so we have a pledge that we are taking our holidays so that we have time to rest and relax. We will be back in 2 weeks. Follow us on all social media at Keep the Mic On, where we will release our September features. I happen to know a couple of them. Wait till y'all find out who we got coming up. And
I know one. I know at least one.
Yeah. So we have a couple of really good features set up for September. We have I know a couple of good ones coming through for you in October. So y'all definitely going to want to like and subscribe on YouTube, on Facebook, so that y'all know who's coming and when. Everyone, as I say every week, please stay safe, wash your hands, stay healthy. We are coming into flu season. So I want everyone to please stay healthy, and we will see y'all all again next week. And good night.
And week after next.
Yeah, and the week after next. Sorry, week after next.
Yeah.
That was me.